Chapter 1263. As it turned out, Hirogua's intelligence wasn't exaggerated at all. Songhai City's 7 stars first military medical hospital. All the big shots in the country had gathered together. Old Man Sun used almost all of his connections to help him. Within Songhai City alone, the first group of 17 experts had quickly assembled. These were all eminent figures in the cultivation medical world. Outside Songhai City, even more experts from other places had been invited. Anyone who had time on their hands was called. That night, Old Man Sun mobilized 20 private immortal warships under the group to be responsible for picking up experts from other cities. The commotion was so great that it could be said to be unprecedented. In the conference room on the top floor, an image was projected on a big screen. On the left was Lotus Sun lying in a medical cabin. The girl's face was rosy and her eyes were closed quietly. She looked very peaceful and didn't look sick at all. On the right side of the screen were real-time monitoring data from the medical cabin, and the results of a scan of her body's environment. The experts in the room frowned and pushed up their glasses as they stared intently at the densely packed data panels in front of them. Sitting in the center of the conference room, Old Man Sun crossed his fingers nervously. All of you are eminent figures in the medical world. What do you think about my granddaughter's condition? In just one night, Old Man Sun seemed to have aged a lot. He had just mobilized his family's power to help the front line investigate the Void invasion. Who would have thought that after the Void incident, another wave would arise before the first wave had even subsided? Next to him, Lu Ping, the director of the military hospital, said, "Everyone has seen her current situation. Miss Sun has no obvious external or internal injuries, her complexion is calm, and her breathing is smooth. However, for some reason, Miss Sun's heartbeat and brainwave activity have stopped abnormally, and then gradually recovered. At first, the episodes occurred once an hour, but now the intervals are getting shorter and shorter. Based on the current data, Miss Sun may be suffering from a neurological disease." At that moment, Director Lu Ping turned his gaze to an old doctor with grizzled hair and beard and a mustache on his chin. "Dr. Zhao, you are the country's expert on neurology." Back then, a soul formation cultivator and a foundation establishment cultivator fell in love. In the end, because of the difference in strength, the soul formation expert used too much force when they kissed. He sucked the tongue out of that foundation establishment female cultivator's mouth. If it weren't for Dr. Zhao connecting her nerves and turning the tide, this female cultivator would have lost her tongue forever. Why don't you tell me what you think about this illness? Dr. Zhao twirled the pen in his hand and shook his head helplessly. "I've already checked Miss Sun's nerves. Everything is stable. He didn't look like a sick person at all. This old man has been practicing medicine for 100 years, but I have never seen such symptoms." Speaking up to this point, Dr. Zhao turned his gaze to a slightly plump female doctor and said, "Dr. Qian is a famous gynecological surgeon. Back then, she only used a scalpel to cut into the body of a nascent soul stage cultivator, and carried out the fetus that had a physical conflict with the nascent soul in the womb of the female cultivator. I wonder, from the perspective of a gynecologist, what does Dr. Qian think of this matter?" "There's no need to mention what happened back then." Dr. Qian smiled modestly. "I've already fully understood Miss Sun's situation, and I believe that Miss Sun's illness is not a gynecological disease. Over the years, I've come across thousands of strange gynecological cases, but that's all because the female cultivator's lifestyle isn't clean. Miss Sun has always been clean, which is all the more reason to rule out the possibility of a gynecological disease." The female doctor surnamed Qian sighed slightly. At this moment, she looked at Old Man Sunday. "I wonder if Mr. Sun is hiding something from us?" Hearing this, Old Man Sun's pupils contracted. He was indeed hiding something about the yin and yang death tribulation. Back when he had taken Lotus Sun to the hospital for a checkup after the 9-Dragon Mountain competition, he had already looked for countless diviners to calculate the curse. However, none of them had divined that Lotus Sun had been cursed, but if this had something to do with the yin and yang death tribulation, then the only way was to find the person who had cursed her and solve the problem at its root. On the other hand, if he were to reveal everything here and word of this were to spread, then it would undoubtedly alert the enemy. Old Man Sun couldn't imagine the consequences at all. While he was in a daze, Jiang Xiaoche suddenly whispered in his ear, "Sir Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal requests an audience. He's already waiting in the other conference room." "Got it, I'll go right away." Old Man Sun nodded. "I'm very sorry, everyone." Then Old Man Sun stood up and bowed deeply to all the doctors. "I'll have to trouble everyone to find out the cause and save my granddaughter." Getting up and leaving the conference room, Old Man Sun's expression was clearly a little melancholy. He didn't know if he had been right to hide the yin and yang death tribulation. He also didn't know if Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could help him turn things around. Although he hadn't found any evidence, he still firmly believed that this matter definitely had something to do with the yin and yang death tribulation. "Mr. Sun, please wait a moment." Just as Old Man Sun was about to go see Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, a female doctor walked quickly out of conference room number 1. Old Man Sun glanced at the identity nameplate on the female doctor's chest and saw the word Lu Min written on it. He instantly recalled this female doctor's background. He remembered that this Dr. Lu Min was an expert in the respiratory department. "Dr. Lu, is there anything you want to say?" Old Man Sun asked. "I don't think this matter can be resolved from a medical point of view," Dr. Lu said. "I'll make a long story short. More than 10 years ago, I treated a boy who also had a fever for some unknown reason, and it didn't subside. But I couldn't find any symptoms. I began to suspect that someone might have put a curse on him. But the experts in the Department of Curse Dispelling already examined him, and they also couldn't find any problems." Old Man Sun's haggard face showed some despair. "There are all sorts of strange curses, and even experts might not be able to identify the most powerful ones. Take that boy who came to see me back then as an example. At that time, our hospital didn't have a Department of Curse Dispelling, but later on, at my recommendation, this matter was resolved appropriately," said Dr. Lu Min Hao. "I wonder if Mr. Sun has ever heard of a Buddhist monk named Jin Deng? P.S. For a previous review of Zen Master Jin Deng, please see Chapter 968. The Origin of Super Chen's Blessed Mouth. Chapter 1264. Songhai City, 7 Stars First Military Medical Hospital. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Old Man Sun were in the middle of a secret discussion. After the Void Invasion incident, the relationship between Huagua Water Curtain Group and the Battle Sect had also become closer. "With your strength, did you see anything wrong with my granddaughter?" Old Man Sun asked hopefully. "Perfected Lord is already the #1 perfected Lord in the world, and your strength is extraordinary. If even Perfected Lord is helpless, I really can't think of anyone else who can help me." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled bitterly in his heart. With his meager strength, he probably wouldn't even be able to withstand 2 palms from Brother Ling. No, even 2 palms were considered too much. 1 palm. But he had an agreement with Wang Ling to never divulge his identity, so he wouldn't mention anything about Wang Ling in front of Sun Yiyuan. In Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's opinion, Lotus Sun would definitely get better. Even if someone had cursed her, the person standing behind her now was the strongest man in the universe. "Miss Sun's symptoms are indeed strange. I didn't notice anything unusual." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shook his head slightly in response to this question. Before he had decided to meet Sun Yiyuan, he had already used Wang Ling's King's Eye to investigate him. The King's Eye didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. He even used his eye cleansing ability. If he was really cursed, there was no curse in the world that could avoid the purification effect of the eye cleansing. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had already seen the power of eye cleansing when Kyoan had been arrested by First Prison of Songhai. The curse power of the 7 perfected immortals was disintegrated completely in an instant. "Looks like we have no choice but to try everything we can." Old Man Sun frowned. He thought of the Master Jin Deng, that Dr. Lu Min had recommended to him, but he didn't know if this person was reliable. "Immortal, have you ever heard of a Buddhist monk named Golden Lamp?" Old Man Sun asked. "Never heard of him." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shook his head. A Dr. Lu recommended this old Zen master, saying that this old Zen master might be able to cure my Rongrong's illness. "There's no other way right now. Maybe we can try." Grenade-throwing senior immortal nodded slightly. But I have another question. That is related to the yin-yang death calamity. Hearing this, Sun Yiyuan's pupils shook. How did you know about this? Mr. Sun, don't worry. I'm the only one who knows about this. If my venerable self didn't even know about this, then wouldn't I, the number one true venerated in the world, be a slacker? Grenade-throwing senior immortal laughed self-deprecatingly. Because he indeed seemed to be a slacker. Ever since he had followed Wang Ling, he had been able to do everything. Otherwise, according to the normal cultivation process, he would need a long time to develop. In fact, it was Wang Ling who had told him about the yin and yang death tribulation. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. I just want to ask, where is the senior who deduced the yin and yang death tribulation now? The one who started the trouble should untie it. Maybe he has a solution for Miss Sun's matter. There's no other way. Old man Sun shook his head helplessly. As far as I know, this person is no longer in this world. He's actually not in this world anymore. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was astonished. If it was someone who had died recently, perhaps Wang Ling could use a resurrection spell to directly turn them into impure earth reincarnation. For example, Warden Liang had already been rescued after the incident in the void. But now, it sounded like that senior who had done the fortune-telling had probably passed away a long time ago. And even his ashes were nowhere to be found. In this case, the resurrection spell wouldn't be able to pinpoint a specific person, so it was completely useless. At that moment, Sun Yiyuan looked at grenade-throwing senior immortal. I still have to receive experts from other cities in the hospital. So this old man has a presumptuous request. Grenade-throwing senior immortal instantly understood. I know what Mr. Sun wants to say. Does this venerable self want to find out the truth about that Zen Master golden lamp? Exactly. Sun Yiyuan bowed. Don't worry, Mr. Sun. This venerable self will do everything I can. Grenade-throwing senior immortal promised. Good. Old man Sun was exceptionally moved. Senior immortal. Don't call me Mr. from now on. Let's call each other brothers. I'll leave everything to you, brother grenade-throwing. Brother Sun, rest assured, just say the word and I'll do it. Grenade-throwing senior immortal said with cupped fists. He was very clear. This wasn't just helping Sun Yiyuan. It was actually also helping Wang Ling. In order to save Lotus Sun's life, this brotherling of his had been working non-stop since this morning. Without further ado, Grenade-throwing senior immortal decided to set out immediately. This was a race against time. The death substitute talismans were being consumed faster and faster. If things were allowed to continue like this, in the end, it might become one talisman per second. Elsewhere in the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling mechanically drew talismans. One by one, the death substitute talismans were swiftly produced and placed neatly on one side. These death substitute talismans were consumed over time in the order in which they were produced. The table, the floor and the bed were all piled up with death substitute talismans. All the gremlins in the Wang family's small villa had been mobilized. Lord Ma was responsible for the remote transmission of the talisman paper, while Pillow Immortal and Bed Immortal were responsible for maintaining order on the scene and sorting out the talisman paper that had already been drawn. Loopy Toad stared at the man in front of it who was drawing talismans with an intoxicated expression and was shaken in its heart. Usually little Master Ling didn't even look this serious when he did his homework. If his level of seriousness was graded, the Wang Ling who was making talismans should have already reached level 4. This was already a very high level, because the highest was level 5. And level 5 would only appear when this little Master Ling was eating crispy noodle snacks. In fact, Wang Ling's soul was now in an out-of-body state. He had used the muscle memory spell to set up his body, so that it would constantly repeat the action of drawing talismans. It was like a human-shaped printer, but this operation required someone to assist on the side. So Loopy Toad couldn't leave at all, because it had to continuously hand talisman paper to Wang Ling. Wang Ling's out-of-body soul came to the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee, because he wanted to find someone. Before he could officially enter the Heavenly Tao conference room, the table god inside was instantly terrified. F***K. He's here again. The last time, this man had only asked, "Where is the Heavenly Tao?" 3 times, and the entire Heavenly Tao conference table had been flipped over. Now that he was in the Heavenly Court again, it was clear that he didn't come with good intentions. "Everyone, I'll be leaving first." The table god had a bad premonition and slipped away again, for fear that Wang Ling would slap him in half. The rest of the Heavenly Tao shivered because the scene in front of them was too familiar. What's wrong with him this time? Why is he so angry? Not good. He's coming for me. At that moment, Death Heavenly Tao felt all the hair on his body stand on end. When he came back to his senses, he already felt the man's peachwood sword against his neck. In a flash, Death Heavenly Tao's head. In an instant, a huge word appeared in his mind. Chapter 1265. Death Heavenly Tao felt very aggrieved when Wang Ling put the peachwood sword to his neck. As one of the 6 main Heavenly Tao, Death Heavenly Tao believed that he had always scrupulously abided by his duty as the main emissary of Heavenly Tao. He was conscientious. He even followed the 996 system to work. He didn't even dare complain when he worked overtime. Every time someone died on Earth, he had to remember the person's name and summarize the person's life experience. Then, he would discuss matters regarding the person's reincarnation. Death Heavenly Tao would give the souls of those who had accumulated virtue and done good deeds as soon as possible, and find a good family for them to enter the reincarnation cycle as soon as possible. If they committed all sorts of evil and broke the law, there was a high chance that they wouldn't be able to be human in their next life. Even if they were human, they would start off with a bad start. But Death Heavenly Tao never expected that it would actually be his turn one day to start with a bad start. His heart was as clear as a mirror. If he couldn't quell the anger of the man behind him, he might really split open. At that moment, Death Heavenly Tao was threatened, and the other Heavenly Tao were also trembling. They had seen the power of this peachwood sword before. If this sword went down, the entire Heavenly Court might collapse. What on earth is going on? What else could it be? Survival Heavenly Tao winked frantically. While Death Heavenly Tao was at a loss, as a good brother, he already had a general understanding of the situation in the world below. Among the 6 main Heavenly Tao, Life Heavenly Tao and Death Heavenly Tao were the only twin brothers, and were collectively known as Life and Death Heavenly Tao. So although there were only 6 positions in the main Heavenly Tao, there were in fact 7 people. This was the legendary, there are 7 things in the unseen world. Shinran, don't be angry. Let's talk this over. Death Heavenly Tao was the younger brother. Now that the younger brother was in trouble, Survival Heavenly Tao, as the older brother, naturally had to help smooth things over. He already knew why Wang Ling was so furious. In the end, it was to save a girl. Wang Ling had been drawing death substitute talismans non-stop, and didn't even have time to eat crispy noodle snacks. Quickly, find out what's going on with this Miss Lotus Sun. As Death Heavenly Tao, how can you be so careless and slack off like this? Survival Heavenly Tao winked frantically at Death Heavenly Tao as he reprimanded Wang Ling. The Heavenly Tao little golden men were covered in Dharma light. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to see their expressions, but after spending a long time with each other, they could still tell each other apart. As a pair of twin brothers, there was no doubt that death and survival were connected. Taoist Master, please don't be impatient. I will find out what is going on. Death Heavenly Tao turned around and bowed respectfully to Wang Ling, then took out a strange-looking golden magic ball from his crotch. He gently stroked the magic orb with both hands, and a screen was immediately projected into the void. The screen showed a chat group of the deceased. This was a chat group specially used by Death Heavenly Tao to register the dead. All the souls of the dead were pulled into such a group, and the maximum number of people in each group was 2,000. Death Heavenly Tao was the leader of all the groups. There were more than a few trillion chat groups like this within his jurisdiction alone. Death Heavenly Tao quickly searched for information on Lotus Sunday. In the end, he really did find records related to Lotus Sun in one of the groups he was in charge of. Look, Ling Jinren, these are the chat records. They're all here. Death Heavenly Tao pulled out all the records related to Lotus Sunday. Then, Wang Ling saw what happened after Lotus Sun joined the chat group of the deceased. At around noon on November 27th. System prompt. The new victim, Lotus Sun, has joined the group. When a girl joined the chat group, the other deceased were actually a little excited. Why is it a girl? Ah, she's only 16, so young. What a pity, why did she come here at 16? Everyone in the chat group sighed. They wanted to know more about the girl. Then the system prompt appeared again. The new victim, Lotus Sun, has left the group. Seeing this, Wang Ling was silent. He speculated that this exit from the group was probably when the first death substitute talisman would officially take effect. Seeing Lotus Sun leave the group, the deceased were collectively shocked. What the hell? She can leave the group? What the hell? She can leave the group after entering? Is she a zombie? What the hell? Why can she leave the group? I want to leave the group too. Boo-hoo-hoo. A lot of the deceased complained in the group. In this group of 2,000 people, there were always people who had died with regrets because they hadn't fulfilled their wishes. Death Heavenly Tao had set up this group to comfort the souls of the deceased. Its original intention was to calm them down by communicating with each other, sharing their grievances, and comparing how miserable they had been. Thus, the specific method of assigning people to the group was based on big data calculations. The death system would constantly add people with even more miserable experiences to the group, thus comforting the souls of the previous person who had joined the group. Lotus Sun, a 16-year-old girl in the prime of her youth, had died for unknown reasons. At such a young age, Death Heavenly Tao's system would naturally determine that she was a very tragic person. Thus, Lotus Sun was pulled into a chat group. Sure enough, after seeing Lotus Sun's age, the deceased who had already joined the group fell silent. Lotus Sun was too young. She was just a 16-year-old girl. But before these deceased could sigh or comfort Lotus Sun, she directly left the group. During that time, there was a brief riot in the group. A lot of the deceased began to think that Lotus Sun had gotten into the group through connections. The deceased reacted violently. But fortunately, Lotus Sun's appearance was just a small interlude, and the matter was soon forgotten. But what the deceased didn't expect was, an hour later, Lotus Sun actually entered the group again. System prompt. The new victim, Lotus Sun, has joined the group. Everyone. What's going on? She entered again? She really woke up in a coffin. What's going on with this girl? She's too weird. Oh my god, has our group lost all our dignity? Wasn't it created by Death Heavenly Tao? The deceased began to wonder about Lotus Sun's identity. But just like an hour ago, before they could ask, the system prompt that Lotus Sun had left the group appeared again. Brother, what's going on? Even Death Heavenly Tao was dumbfounded by this scene. You're Death Heavenly Tao, how would I know what's going on? Life Heavenly Tao put its hand to its forehead. The situation was indeed somewhat beyond their understanding. In less than 24 hours, Lotus Sun had already entered and exited the group more than a dozen times. She herself was fine. This directly broke the morale of the other deceased who had joined the group. No one had ever been able to enter and leave the chat group created by Death Heavenly Tao, and the frequency of the system prompts was getting faster and faster. Death Heavenly Tao speculated that it wouldn't be long before the system prompts flooded the screen. Chapter 1266. Death Heavenly Tao had never thought that the situation would turn out like this. He had been in charge of Death Heavenly Tao for so long, and the only person who could casually enter and exit his chat group of the dead was Tao Ancestor Wang. After Tao Ancestor Wang created them, in order to make his cultivation life more colorful, he would often disguise himself as a man called Ague and sneak into the chat group of the dead, disguising himself as the dead to communicate with them. By personally experiencing the lives of the dead, he would be able to improve his understanding of the Tao. To put it bluntly, he was just collecting materials. Ling Jinren, this is so strange that even I'm a little confused. Wiping at his sweat, Death Heavenly Tao lowered his head and said, not daring to look Wang Ling in the eye at all. Logically speaking, after a cultivator in the mortal world dies, the Heavenly Tao death system will determine that he or she will be sent to the Heavenly Tao soul vault to collect the soul of the deceased. Finally, according to the system's allocation, the souls of the dead will be pulled into the chat group of the dead. Did those enchanting metal men make a mistake? Hurry up and check it out. You're so careless, yet you're still qualified to be the master of Heavenly Tao? Survival Heavenly Tao berated him. On the surface, he seemed to be reprimanding it, but Survival Heavenly Tao was panicking inside. If the two brothers didn't handle this matter well, their position as Heavenly Axiom emissary would come to an end. They might even be replaced by the newly promoted Snack Heavenly Axiom. At this moment, the other main Heavenly Taos were all silent. At a time like this, they didn't dare to interfere at all. Every debt had its debtor, so the best choice was to watch silently. Death Heavenly Tao was so nervous that his forehead was covered in sweat. He spun the golden magic ball in his hand and investigated Lotus Sun's soul capture records. The result was once again beyond his expectations. How is this possible? Death Heavenly Tao screamed as if he had seen something terrifying, and his legs went limp. What's going on? Upon seeing this, Survival Heavenly Tao hurriedly placed his hand on the magic ball. When the soul-reaping records appeared in his mind, Survival Heavenly Tao was also shocked. There's no record at all? As soon as he said that, the other Heavenly Tao finally couldn't sit still anymore. This matter was extremely strange. No records? How is that possible? Time Heavenly Tao spoke first. Logically speaking, the little golden man in charge of capturing souls shouldn't have made such a low-level mistake. In that case, without the little soul-luring golden man descending to the mortal world to snatch Lotus Sun's soul, it would be impossible for Lotus Sun to escape. An unimaginable question appeared. Who had stolen Lotus Sun's soul? If her soul had been stolen by an outsider, then how could this person bring her soul into the Heavenly Tao Soul Vault? These questions entangled the other Heavenly Taos, causing the surrounding atmosphere to instantly become tense. Now they thought of something terrifying. That was the Heavenly Court, where the Heavenly Tao was located, might be being invaded by foreign objects. At this moment, the other emissaries of the main Heavenly Axiom finally realized the seriousness of the problem. Investigate. We must get to the bottom of this. Strength Heavenly Tao was the first to speak. If the Heavenly Court is being invaded, we can't refuse. Space, don't you have anything to say? You have surveillance over all the spaces in the Heavenly Court. Is it an invasion? Space Heavenly Tao frowned. But I don't sense anything out of the ordinary. All the Heavenly Tao little golden men are operating in an orderly manner. What's going on? Is there a traitor among us? Strength Heavenly Tao put both hands on the table, then turned its gaze to Soul Heavenly Tao. Soul, you don't sense anything out of the ordinary either? Soul Heavenly Tao sighed slightly. Although I'm Soul Heavenly Tao, I'm not responsible for capturing souls. I only carry out the final judgment and appeal to the souls of those who have committed evil deeds. I don't care about anything else. Wang Ling was also aware of this. Soul Heavenly Tao was more like an arbitrator, and its ability was to interrogate the soul. If those who had made mistakes could withstand the soul interrogation, it proved that they had repented from the bottom of their hearts. This showed that they still had a conscience and still had a chance to turn over a new leaf. For these people, even if they had made mistakes in the past, Soul Heavenly Tao would carry out the final judgment and deal with them leniently based on the results of the soul interrogation. As for those who couldn't withstand the soul interrogation, most of them were sent to Animal Path. Ling Jinren, as you can see, this matter is very strange. In Heavenly Court, we will definitely thoroughly investigate this matter and find out who on earth is repeatedly seducing Miss Sun's soul. Strength Heavenly Tao said as it bowed to Wang Ling. Then, Wang Ling waited for 10 seconds or so before the 6 main Heavenly Tao members of the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee held a discussion. With Death Heavenly Tao as their representative, they finally gave Wang Ling a preliminary plan. Ling Jinren, how about this? I will personally descend to the mortal world and lie low next to Miss Sunday. If it's one of the Heavenly Tao's little soul-reaping golden men, given my authority, I can definitely stop it easily. Death Heavenly Tao kept wiping at his sweat. Rest assured, Ling Jinren, I'm fully in charge of this matter, and I believe we'll be able to resolve it very soon. As for the life substitute talisman, my elder brother Survival Heavenly Tao will descend to the mortal world to help Ling Jinren draw it. Although my brother's cultivation is far below Ling Jinren's, If he adds his Great Seal of Survival to the Life Substitute Talisman, it can just about match Ling Jinren's duration. The Great Seal of Survival? Wang Ling nodded. He knew the origin of this magic seal. The 6 main heavenly Dao all had their own exclusive magic weapons which Dao ancestor Wang had specially created back then. These heavenly Dao magic weapons were even more powerful than world-defying magic weapons, and were astonishingly powerful. Then we'll do as you say. After thinking for a bit, Wang Ling finally agreed to the plan put forward by the Heavenly Dao Governing Committee. The main thing was that when he heard it, he indeed felt that the whole thing was very strange. The Heavenly Dao Little Golden Man had sent out a soul-reaping envoy. Without any record of it, it had been able to easily seduce Lotus Sun's soul into the Heavenly Dao Soul Bank. Yet, none of the 6 main Heavenly Dao members of the Heavenly Dao Governing Committee had noticed anything. Yin and Yang Death Tribulation. What on earth was this thing? Jinren, us 2 brothers are ready. At that moment, the Life and Death Heavenly Dao twin brothers spoke in unison. Wang Ling turned his gaze and saw that they had already put on human skin coats. This was a special disguise used by Heavenly Dao in the mortal world. In essence, they were still little golden men. The human skin cloak they were wearing could completely conceal their Heavenly Dao aura. It was also Dao ancestor Wang's masterpiece back then. His uncanny craftsmanship was truly amazing. At that moment, the 2 Life and Death Heavenly Dao brothers stood in front of Wang Ling. Their human appearance was very young. They were tall and handsome. Their eyes were bright and full of expression, and their skin was fair. The 2 brothers were wearing denim overalls, and they looked like young people. The way to distinguish them was the Heavenly Dao golden character between their eyebrows. 1 life, 1 death. Apart from Wang Ling, no one else could see the Heavenly Dao character between their eyebrows. At that moment, Life Heavenly Dao cupped his fists in a salute and said respectfully to Wang Ling, "Ling Jinren, we can descend at any time. But we don't have any status in the mortal world at the moment, so we'll need Ling Jinren's help with this." Wang Ling nodded. This wasn't his first time helping people get IDs. He could leave everything to Audiobook. Chapter 1267. It wasn't rare for Heavenly Dao emissaries to descend to the mortal world. In fact, every year, the Heavenly Dao Little Golden Man would transform into an emissary and enter the mortal world for an inspection. However, these inspections were relatively free. Any Heavenly Dao Little Golden Man could submit an application to the Heavenly Dao Governing Committee as long as they wanted to, and they could descend to the mortal world after passing the review. The main Heavenly Dao was usually busy with official business, so the number of times it came to the lower realm was relatively less. This time, the Life and Death Heavenly Dao brothers had descended to the lower realms for a single person. This was the first time something like this had happened. Audiobook had already been waiting at the entrance of the Wang family's small villa for a long time. Seeing Death Heavenly Dao come out of the room, Audiobook hurriedly cupped his fists in a salute. "Greetings, Lord Death. I look exactly the same as my brother. With your cultivation level, how did you know it was me?" Death Heavenly Law was very curious. Audiobook said with a beaming face, "It's Shifu, he gave me the authority. It's convenient to receive the 2 sirs." Authority. Death Heavenly Dao immediately understood. This was probably the effect of the Heaven's Will's Great Sharing technique. The Greater Sharing spell had a branch spell called the Knight's Contract. By binding a specific person, the other party could obtain a portion of the spell's power. Now that Audiobook had been sent out by Wang Ling to run errands, Wang Ling had already shared part of the authority over the other king's eye with him. However, this authority was only used to distinguish between the Heavenly Dao of life and death. Audiobook currently had too much strength and too much authority, and it was very easy for his body to overload. He led Death Heavenly Dao to the hospital where Lotus Sun was. Audiobook gave Death Heavenly Dao the identity document he had prepared. "Lord Death, here are your documents." The names on it were Wang Sheng and Wang Si. It was very simple and crude. When the name was recorded, the police officer in charge of registering the identity information was also shocked. The death of the king. There was actually someone who would come up with such an inauspicious name. I knew people would gossip about my name. Death Heavenly Dao mumbled as he accepted his identification card. He picked up his brother's ID card and threw it out of the window. The ID card immediately turned into a golden light and flew toward Wang Sheng's location. How does Lord Death know what I'm thinking? Nonsense, I am the Heavenly Tao. Oh, actually I also think that this name is inauspicious. Even a homophone would be good. But since you've already done it, then forget it. Death Heavenly Law sighed. As the Heavenly Tao of Death, he didn't avoid death at all. In the past, when he was in the lower realms, he used the fake name Wang Si. But after Wang Ling put a sword to his neck this time, Death Heavenly Tao finally felt the fear of death. Naming things was indeed something that needed to be paid attention to. How's young Miss Sun doing? Death Heavenly Tao asked. It's still the same. His illness is recurring. My heart is beating erratically. Audiobook answered truthfully. There are more than 40 experts gathered in the hospital right now, and they're all discussing countermeasures. If we can't find the reason, what's the point of gathering together? This isn't a team fight. Death Heavenly Tao sat in the front passenger seat and snorted. I'll be sitting next to Miss Sun's bed later. I'd like to see which lunatic dares to make a move in front of me. Audiobook. The Heavenly Tao cursed. This should be unprecedented in history. However, it wasn't completely unreasonable for Death Heavenly Tao to be so excited. Audiobook understood this feeling very well. After all, after experiencing the danger of death, people would always have new understandings of themselves. Obviously, it was the same for the Heaven Tao. In a small village on the southern outskirts of Shanghai, a dusty spirit car drove over a bumpy concrete road, kicking up a cloud of dust as it shook violently. At the Nantian Village Spirit Car Station, this old spirit car finally stopped on the side of the road, and a handsome man with waist-length hair got out. Dressed in white and with beautiful hair, it was really grenade-throwing Senior Immortal himself. He didn't dress as grandly as he did in the sect, considering that the person he was going to meet was a Zen monk. Thus, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had specially chosen to dress very plainly. Nantian Village was under air traffic control, and there was a huge shipyard nearby, where countless air immortal warships passed by every day. Given the restriction on flight, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could only come in a spirit car. Master Jin Deng? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal carefully recalled this Buddhist name, and confirmed that he had indeed never heard it before. Given his experience in the cultivation world, if there really was such a reclusive genius, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that he would know about it. Furthermore, he even asked a lot of his good friends on the way. The result was the same. No one had heard of this Buddhist named Jin Deng. I hope this trip will be fruitful, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said in his heart. Based on the address that Dr. Lu Min had given him, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal officially entered Nantian Village to look for clues on this Zen master Jin Deng. At the entrance of the village, an old man with a bit of hair on his upper body was playing chess alone. Smoking a cigarette, he was very engrossed in playing 4 roles and playing left and right. From a distance, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought he had run into some kind of god. In the end, when he went over to take a look, he saw that this old man was actually playing aeroplane chess by himself. Old man. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked tentatively. The old man glanced at grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and replied, Jungler? It's been a long time since I've been a jungler. My teammates are too weak, and I can't carry them. Helpless, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could only get straight to the point and ask, How do I get to Kaiguang Temple? The old man was furious. Naked pants? I'm already so old. Why would I wear open-crotch pants? Young man, don't make fun of me. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal dropped his forehead into his hand. He hadn't expected to run into an empty-ear maniac as soon as he entered the village. Shaking his head in disappointment, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal planned to go into the village and ask the other villagers for clues. Suddenly, the old man's ears seemed to have recovered and said, If you're going to the Kaiguang Temple, walk straight for 800 meters. The broken house on the right is there. Thank you, sir. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal cupped his fists and left. Following the instructions of the old man with empty ears at the door, he successfully found the dilapidated house that the old man mentioned. A few of the rivets on the wooden door of the monastery were missing. There was even a gap on the door, through which one could see the situation inside the monastery. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was about to knock. An old voice came from inside. Your presence brings light to my humble dwelling. The door isn't closed. Please come in and talk. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was startled by this voice. It seemed that Zen Master Golden Lamp in the temple had long predicted that he would come. In his heart, he marveled at the power of this Zen Master. Just as he was about to push the door open, he felt that the seemingly broken door was actually extremely heavy. He couldn't move it at all with just one hand. At that moment, a chuckle came from inside. I forgot to tell you, Senior Immortal, you have to push the door a little harder. This door has also been blessed. Chapter 1268. At that moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's astonishment simply couldn't be described in words. He was a true venerated. Although he had reached this realm by eating the heavenly Dao broccoli that Brother Ling had enlightened, his current strength had indeed reached an extraordinary realm. As far as earth cultivators were concerned, his current battle strength was second only to Immortal Jinyuan's. However, what surprised him was, he was at the true sovereign realm. Coupled with the hand speed and explosive power that he had accumulated after being single for more than 2,000 years. Using his dominant hand, he was actually unable to move the door of the Kaiguang Temple at all. This Zen Master Golden Lamp is indeed extraordinary, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said to himself. On the way to the Kaiguang Temple, he had always had doubts about the identity of this Master Jin Deng. After all, there were countless swindlers in the pugilistic world these days. And the false believers who swindled money and women in the name of religion were even more rampant. Golden Lamp. It was a Buddhist name that he had never heard of. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had thought that it wasn't a big deal. However, he now realized that he was wrong. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal instantly understood that this Kaiguang Temple gate was probably this Zen Master Golden Lamp's test for him. If he couldn't enter the temple, then this trip would be in vain. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had no choice but to look serious. He took a deep breath. In the next moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's palm glowed brightly. The pure blue spirit light was like a layer of coating, firmly wrapping around his palm. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't done this casually. Since he was seeking an audience with a Buddhist Zen master, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal naturally had to show his attitude. The experience he had accumulated from traveling the world and courting death everywhere was of great help to him at this moment. Because of this, even though Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't a disciple of the Buddhist sect, he could rely on the experience he had accumulated everywhere to display the unique techniques of each sect. And now Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was using it. It was the merciful and compassionate palm that he had learned from an eminent Shaolin monk. This was a water element palm technique, and it emphasized on the gentle force of the spring breeze and rain. The seemingly soft palm was extremely bewildering, but when it really landed, it would produce an explosive power. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had already mastered this palm. His palm emitted a nourishing force that was compatible with all living things, causing the flowers and plants in the mud nearby to grow rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the tree in the monastery was affected by the fluctuations of the palm. Its tall branches suddenly grew horizontally and extended out of the monastery. Just as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was about to bring down his palm, inside the temple, Zen Master Golden Lamp's voice came again. Immortal, please come in. I'm afraid the door of my temple will be destroyed if you hit it. Yes. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal bowed at the door and quickly withdrew his palm energy. At the same time, he saw that the gate of the Kaiguang Temple was slowly opening. This monastery was very small, and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't see anyone else. There was a copper incense burner in the middle of the courtyard, which faced the Hall of Great Strength. A monk with a ring scar on his head, and wearing an old kasaya was striking a wooden fish inside. Greetings, Master. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't seen Master Jin Deng's true face. Looking at the monk's back from a distance at the threshold, he bowed respectfully with his hands in front of his chest. You don't have to be so polite, Senior Immortal. Let's talk inside. Zen Master Golden Lamp smiled. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal then stepped through the threshold. In a split second, he felt an immense pressure that made it hard for him to breathe. These floor tiles, grenade-throwing senior immortal realized that the floor tiles he was standing on had probably been blessed by this Zen master golden lamp. But while this pressure was fierce, it didn't stop grenade-throwing senior immortal in his tracks. It was only 20 meters from the door to the Hall of Great Strength. It was a very short yet very far distance. Grenade-throwing senior immortal hadn't expected it to be so difficult. If a true immortal had come here, he probably wouldn't have been able to take a single step. 5 minutes later, grenade-throwing senior immortal arrived at the main hall. With the pressure gone, he felt as if dozens of mountains had been lifted off his shoulders, and he instantly felt relaxed. Have I passed the master's test? Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked with a wry smile. The monk in front of him was unexpectedly younger than he had imagined, and didn't have white hair and beard as described in the legends. Grenade-throwing senior immortal found this strange. That Dr. Lu Min had clearly said that Zen Master Golden Lamp was very old. It's not really a test, because I already knew that senior immortal would definitely be able to walk through my atrium. The monk knocked on the wooden fish and said unhurriedly, "The Hall of Great Strength is usually never open to outsiders, and worshippers only light incense in the censer. Won't worshippers feel pressured when they step inside? Their realms aren't high enough, so they won't be able to sense it. On the contrary, the higher their realms, the harder it is for them to walk through the atrium outside the hall." Zen Master Golden Lamp smiled. There are 3,910 floor tiles in this monastery, and each one represents this poor monk's reincarnation. Grenade-throwing senior immortal's eyes widened when he heard this. One floor tile represented one reincarnation? If that was the case, how long on earth had this Zen Master Golden Lamp been alive? Grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help thinking of someone. To have such an identity. Could he be the ancestor of the Wang family whom Wang Zhen had mentioned, the founder of Heavenly Dao ancestor Wang? But this was just grenade-throwing senior immortal's guess. He had previously suspected that Dao ancestor Wang was Wang Ling. But Wang Ling had denied it. Suppressing the shock in his heart, grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help asking, "Since Great Master already knew that I would come, do you know why I'm here?" "Of course I do. For the sake of a young lady's life, you were entrusted by someone to spy on me. Please don't blame me, Great Master." "Senior immortal, there's no need to panic." Zen Master Golden Lamp smiled. "I've been spied on countless times in my 1,000 reincarnations, and I'm already used to it. Senior immortal can already be considered the most polite one. When you open the door, you even know to greet me with my Buddhist palm technique. Great Master, you flatter me. This poor monk has been in this Kaiguang monastery for many years, and has blessed a lot of light for himself as well as for other people. Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. As a monk, it's only natural that we do our best to save others." When Zen Master Golden Lamp said this, the hand he used to knock on the wooden fish paused. "But this time this poor monk has a condition. Great Master, please speak your mind. I want something from Senior Immortal's body." "What is it?" "Your eyes." "My eyes?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was startled. "No, the one that someone gave you." Chapter 1269. He actually wanted the king's eye that Brother Ling had left for him. It had to be said that Zen Master Golden Lamp's astonishing words frightened grenade-throwing Senior Immortal on the spot. He didn't expect the other party to propose such a condition. On one hand, the king's eye wasn't his, so he had no right to make decisions. More importantly, if he really handed over his king's eye, would Zen Master Golden Lamp really be able to do anything about it? One had to know that the strangeness of this matter far surpassed everything that had happened before. Even Brother Ling didn't seem to have an effective solution for the time being. You can discuss this matter with your friend before making a decision. At this time, the rhythmic sound of the wooden fish in the Hall of Great Strength sounded again. Zen Master Golden Lamp closed his eyes slightly, looking like he had nothing on his mind. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's forehead broke out in sweat. Zen Master Golden Lamp was clearly not deliberately pressuring him, but now he was extremely nervous. Grenade-throwing had initially thought that after getting to know Wang Ling, He wouldn't be moved by anything strange that happened in the world. Unexpectedly, the Zen master golden lamp in front of him gave him a great sense of oppression. Moreover, he began to become more and more curious about the identity of this hermit Zen master who had reincarnated 3,910 times. My identity will be known to you sooner or later. Zen master golden lamp spoke again. Grenade-throwing senior immortal realized that his soul shield against mind reading was completely useless in front of this Zen master golden lamp. The monk knocked on the wooden fish. He did not look sideways, but he could clearly tell what he was thinking. In addition, I want to remind you of one thing. After a long silence in the hall, Zen master golden lamp spoke. Master, please speak. Time waits for no man. I have reincarnated thousands of times, and no one can compete with me in patience. This penniless monk can wait, but that lady can't. Using the death substitution talisman to pay for my life is not a long-term solution. I understand. Grenade-throwing senior immortal bowed again. Was he really going to give the king's eye away? How was he supposed to tell Brother Ling about this? This became the difficult problem at hand. Elsewhere, Death Heavenly Dao smoothly arrived at the hospital under Audio's lead. The hospital was heavily guarded, and all the staff were busy. When he arrived at the entrance of the hospital, Death Heavenly Dao had just arrived. Two soul-reaping little golden men, sent by Heavenly Dao, were supporting a benevolent-looking grandmother over the stairs of the hospital. This was someone who had just passed away from the hospital. From the benevolent smile on the old granny's face, it was obvious that she had passed away peacefully without any worries. This was a man who had died of old age. Death Heavenly Dao could tell at a glance. Moreover, there was a faint layer of magical light on the old granny's body. That was the outer layer formed by the good thoughts of daily life, so that the soul would not suffer the pain of the cold after leaving the body. Of course, no one else was able to see this scene. This was the first time Audioa had seen something like this since he had been granted partial access to the king's eye, and he was amazed. Greetings, Lord Death. The little golden man in charge of capturing souls bowed respectfully when he saw Death Heavenly Dao's human form. They knew that the Heavenly Dao above had already sent two main emissaries to the lower realm to investigate the matter regarding a girl. The Heavenly Dao was shaken. Before this, all the little golden men responsible for capturing souls had gathered and done a head count. In the end, not a single golden man was missing. Everyone was seriously carrying out their work according to their daily schedule. Lord, do you have any leads? Audioa asked as he led Death Heavenly Dao in the direction of Lotus Sun's ICU. Death Heavenly Dao shook his head. To be honest, I'm still confused. I don't know what on earth happened. If only Dao Ancestor was here. Has Dao Ancestor Wang passed away? We've always felt that Dao Ancestor isn't dead. He's just entering his own cycle of reincarnation. But Dao Ancestor has indeed disappeared for too long. It's been 10,000 years since he established Heavenly Court, and there's no trace of him. You can't find him? He guessed that Dao Ancestor didn't want us to find him. Death Heavenly Dao said. I'm telling you all this for Ling Junren's sake. If you weren't his disciple, you wouldn't have the right to know. Audioa was alarmed. What on earth is the relationship between my Shifu and Dao Ancestor Wang? Death Heavenly Dao smiled and kept him guessing. I can't say. I understand. Audioa nodded. In his heart, he clearly knew that this might be the legendary, heavenly secrets cannot be revealed. After Wang Zhen, and this group of people from the domain of the gods had decided to stay on Earth to cultivate, Audioa had learned more about the epic of cultivation. There were some things he could know, but there were also some things that wouldn't do him any good if he knew too much. Audioa was very curious, but he was also a person who knew his place. Death Heavenly Dao had already said this much, so he decided not to ask any more questions. If he had a chance in the future, he believed that his Shifu would tell him himself. Now he just needed to know that Ling Junren was OP. Your Excellency, this is Miss Lotus Sun's ward. A few minutes later, they arrived in front of Lotus Sun's ICU ward. The bodyguards in black from Huaguo Water Curtain Group stood in front of the door like two door gods. Sir, I've been entrusted by Senior Immortal to bring a senior to take a look at Miss Sun's condition, Audioa said amiably. He then took out the visitor's pass which he had prepared beforehand from his pocket. Old Man Sun had given it to him, and only internal personnel had it. Please come in. The two bodyguards exchanged glances, then made way for them. Gentlemen, apart from us, was there anyone else who came here today? Ajwa asked again before they entered. One of the bodyguards sighed. In addition to grenade-throwing senior immortal, there were also several experts who rushed over from other cities. But after taking a look, they all shook their heads and said that the situation wasn't good. I believe Miss Sun will recover. Ajwa cupped his fists in salute. The senior I've invited doesn't want anyone to disturb him when he's seeing a patient. Before we come out, please close the door and don't let anyone else in. Don't worry, Director Zhua. The two bodyguards nodded solemnly. They then led Death Heavenly Dao into the ward. Lotus Sun lay quietly in the medical cabin, the young girl's sleeping countenance moving. What a lucky girl. She actually alarmed so many people. Looking at the girl, Ajwa smiled bitterly in his heart. Death Heavenly Dao didn't stand on ceremony, and directly sat down cross-legged. Ajwa asked, Lord Death Heavenly Dao, what do we do next? Death Heavenly Dao crossed his arms with a solemn expression. There's nothing to do, we can only wait. I want to see who on earth did this to her. The consumption rate of the death substitute talismans had already increased to 1 every half an hour. Death Heavenly Dao calculated the time, and had a feeling that it wouldn't be long before Lotus Sun's next soul reaping. About 5 minutes later, the heavy sound of chains came from outside Lotus Sun's intensive care unit. It was a sound that made one's soul involuntarily tremble. Ajwa couldn't stop trembling all over. Your Excellency, this is... Don't panic, it's the Soul Reaper. Death Heavenly Dao placed his hand on Ajwa's shoulder to calm him down. At the same time, he was extremely astonished. The Heavenly Dao Soul Reaper little golden men under him were all law enforcement officers. But the malevolent aura outside the ward, where was it coming from? Senior Ajwa? Just then, Ajwa was astonished to hear the girl's voice. The girl, who had been lying quietly, was unexpectedly affected by the chains and forced out of her body. The first thing she saw was Ajwa and a young man in overalls standing next to her bed. Death Heavenly Dao hurriedly reached out and pulled the girl's soul behind him, guarding it like an old hen protecting its chicks. What on earth is going on? The girl was full of puzzlement. Because of the death substitute talisman, every time she was resurrected, she would forget the last time her soul had been taken away. Don't worry, Junior Lotus Sun, I'll explain later. This senior and I are here to save you, Ajwa said as he looked at Lotus Sunday. As soon as he said that, BZD, a giant chain with a golden hook directly ignored the door to the ward and pierced through it. It grabbed at the girl's bright and beautiful collarbone. Chapter 1270. The hook, which was full of hostility, tore through the air, and the immense pressure it exuded made one's mind tremble. Startled by the scene in front of her, the girl stood rooted to the spot and didn't dare move half a step. When she saw herself lying in the medical cabin, she immediately had an answer. So I'm already dead? The girl couldn't believe what she was seeing. But how on earth had she died? Lotus Sun couldn't remember any of it. Ajwa immediately broke the girl's wild imagination. Calm down, Junior Lotus Sunday. My Shifu won't let you die. This senior was specially invited by my Shifu. Senior Zhua's Shifu? Lotus Sun was even more puzzled. Ajwa dropped his forehead into his hand. The situation had also gotten to his head, and he had almost let slip. My Shifu was only willing to come out for Mr. Sun's sake. Junior Lotus Sun will know the rest later. Fortunately, these words dispelled the girl's suspicions. You two hide behind me and don't move no matter what. Leave the rest to me. The situation was critical. Death Heavenly Dao strode forward and directly grabbed the hook that had been trying to latch onto the girl. This hook was very precise. If Ajwa hadn't been there, Lotus Sun's soul would definitely have been pulled over. It looked like she was already an old hammerstone. At this point in time, the death substitute talisman mass-produced in the Wang family's small villa should have already taken effect. But it still needed time to take effect. It usually took about 2 minutes to take effect. What Death Heavenly Tao needed to do was to catch the thing that had taken Lotus Sun's soul during this 2-minute gap. But it was clear that Death Heavenly Tao hadn't realized at all that this soul gatherer was actually so tyrannical. He had previously thought that some Heavenly Tao little golden man had taken advantage of the situation and covered up the matter. But now it looked like this soul gatherer's origins were probably extraordinary. Death Heavenly Tao held the hook firmly in place and pulled it hard in his direction. The soul gatherer had obviously realized that its hook had fallen into someone else's hands. It hadn't hit its target. Hence, he retrieved the hook lock at the first possible moment. Just like that, the two forces inside and outside the ward began to compete. 2 minutes passed very quickly. The death substitute talisman took effect, and Lotus Sun cried out. It was as if her body had produced a powerful magnetic force that directly sucked her soul in. Ajwa. At the same time, the soul reaper outside the ward disappeared. Even the chain that had mist turned into golden powder on the spot. What on earth is going on? Ajwa was horrified. In short, we can be sure now, this definitely wasn't done by our generation's Heavenly Tao. Now that the quality of the Heavenly Tao little golden men has been increasing year by year, such violent soul hooking methods weren't used 1,000 years ago. Death Heavenly Tao wiped his sweat. The accident just now had also shocked him. Fortunately, Death Heavenly Tao finally had some inklings of what was going on. Ajwa. His Excellency said that it wasn't your Heavenly Tao's doing, which means, Death Heavenly Tao said, there's no mistake. My opponent just now was the ancient Heavenly Golden Man. Only the ancestor of our generation of Heavenly Tao Golden Men. Only an old Golden Man could have such a strong oppressive force. Ancient Gold Men? Where did they come from? The little Golden Man of the Heavenly Tao is constantly reincarnating as time passes. Every Heavenly Tao's reincarnation cycle is different. For example, I've only reincarnated 46 times. Among our 6 main Heavenly Tao, Strength Heavenly Tao has reincarnated the most. It has already reincarnated 262 times. Death Heavenly Tao said. After reincarnating, the Heavenly Tao will inherit the power of the previous Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man. The previous Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man will then disappear substantially. So I also find it inconceivable that this ancient Heavenly Tao Golden Man could appear here. Ajwa. Then what do we do now? Death Heavenly Tao. We've already found a way in. As long as we can capture this ancient Golden Man, we'll know what's going on once we interrogate him. But if we want to capture him, we can only do so during the 2-minute gap when the death substitute talisman takes effect. I didn't use my full strength in the first round just now to test his strength. I'll definitely be able to take him down in the second round. Understanding. Ajwa nodded slightly. That's all we can do. Right now, they still had to wait for the girl to suddenly die again, before they could continue with their operation. In order to ensure that they could capture this ancient Heavenly Tao Golden Man in their next operation, Death Heavenly Tao also took out its Heavenly Tao magic weapon. Book of Death Now. Looking at this book with a black cover, Ajwa's pupils contracted. That's right. This is my exclusive Heavenly Tao magic weapon. Book of Death Now. Does it mean that as long as you write a name in the book, someone will die? Hehe, that was the original version. It's already been upgraded. Apart from writing a name, as long as there's anything related to that person, such as hair, fingernails, or used objects, put it in the book. The owner of the object will die immediately and absorb the soul into the book. Death Heavenly Tao's plan was very clear. Later, as soon as the hook lock appeared, he would open this Book of Death Now and put the hook lock into the book. At that time, no matter what kind of demon or ghost was outside the door, his soul would be sucked into the book. Of course, the Book of Death Now didn't work on everyone. Users on the Heavenly Tao white list, as well as Death Heavenly Tao himself, were all ineffective. After about half an hour, the heavy sound of chains rang out again from outside the ward. When the girl's soul heard the sound of chains, she sat up in shock and left her body. At the same time, she still couldn't remember what on earth had happened earlier. Senior Ajwa? She looked surprised. Ajwa had already experienced this expression half an hour ago. He could only repeat what he had said before. Junior sister Lotus-san, don't worry, I'll explain later. This senior and I are here to save you. Lotus-san looked at herself in the hospital bed with a look of disbelief on her face. So I'm already dead? Now Audua realized. The scariest thing about humans wasn't being a repeater when they were alive. Rather, after death, they were still a repeater. Audua was well aware that now wasn't the time to explain things. Moreover, even if he explained everything to the young girl, if the young girl returned to her physical body, this memory would still disappear. Buzz. Outside the ward, everything was as Death Heavenly Dao had predicted. The hook lock once again passed through the ward. But this time, it was beyond Death Heavenly Dao's expectations. Because this time, there wasn't just one hook lock. There were 3 of them. These shameless people had actually gone to shake people. Chapter 1271. Now, Death Heavenly Dao was certain that the appearance of these ancient gold men wasn't a misunderstanding. It was clear that this was a premeditated operation. Those outside, I don't know whose orders you're acting on. But have you thought of the consequences for daring to attack the main Heavenly Dao? Death Heavenly Dao's voice was low. He was already so angry that even the suspenders on his overalls trembled with the anger he exuded. Afraid of Death Heavenly Dao, Audua took out a basketball from his pocket in the next second, and hurriedly stepped back to protect Lotus Sunday, Heavenly Dao. Lotus Sun heard a word that was both very familiar, and also very strange. Wasn't this the existence that all cultivators were chasing after like ducks? So this young man standing in front of her to protect her, was the embodiment of Heavenly Dao. The girl covered her mouth in disbelief. There are 6 main messengers of Heavenly Dao. Life and death, mind, space, time, strength, and soul. This one was sent by my Shifu. Audua explained on the side. Lotus Sun was even more surprised. Who on earth is Senior's with Shifu? Audua was silent for a moment. It's Wang Ling. In any case, after the soul returned to the body, all its memories would be wiped clean. Audua felt that it was fine to say it now. On the contrary, the girl's expression wasn't as surprised as he had imagined. So that's how it is. Looks like I owe classmate Wang Ling another life. At that moment, the girl's mood was exceptionally complicated. Confusion, emotion, and surprise at hearing his name were all intertwined. But Lotus Sun knew that now wasn't the time to be emotional. You don't look that surprised. I should have thought of it. Lotus Sun smiled and said, We were attacked by Shadow Stream killers earlier, but I can't seem to connect the dots between what happened and what happened. I thought there was something wrong with my memory. But why is Senior Zhua telling me this? You'll know in the future, Audua said. He thought it was a white lie. If he told the girl now, when she returned to the body, all her memories of the out-of-body experience would disappear. It was probably a little cruel. Death Heavenly Dao stood alone in front of the 3 chains, one hand gripping them. The strength of the main Heavenly Dao messenger was at a huge advantage at that moment. Even if the other party was an ancient gold man, he was still no match for the primary Heavenly Dao. His previous question was a warning. The Death Heavenly Dao hoped that these ancient gold men would rein in their horses before it was too late. However, from the looks of it, these gold men were here under orders, so negotiations were useless. Now there wasn't much time left for Death Heavenly Dao. This is the path you have chosen. Don't blame me for being merciless. With about 40 seconds left, Death Heavenly Dao decisively clamped the 3 chains into the Book of Immediate Death. In an instant, 3 incomparably mournful screams that sounded like vengeful spirits came from outside the ward. Then, these chains were quickly absorbed by the Book of Death. Even the 3 ancient gold men controlling the chains were all absorbed into the book. They became 3 beautiful illustrations. Audua sighed in amazement. This was definitely one of the most popular artworks on the PvP site. Audua. Is everything settled? Death Heavenly Dao snorted. A mere primordial golden man dares to act rashly in front of me? However, this matter did not end there. Your Excellency, do you think the other party will send more people? Audua asked. Definitely. They've already noticed us. There was 1 soul-reaping envoy first, and now there are 3 more. The next wave will definitely be even more. Death Heavenly Dao said. But fortunately, We have something to do now. As long as we pry open the mouths of these 3 primordial golden men, before the next wave of soul-reaping envoys arrives, we might be able to find out what happened. After saying that, Death Heavenly Tao went to check on Lotus Sunday. But at that moment, the death substitute talisman took effect again. Just like before. The girl cried out as she was sucked back into her own body. Elsewhere, Audra was typing furiously on his phone. Death Heavenly Tao asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm preparing the questions and answers that junior sister Lotus Sun will ask when she wakes up. I don't have to explain later." Next was the interrogation of the 3 primordial golden men. Death Heavenly Tao flipped open the Book of Death, and the spirit of one of the primordial golden men fell out. Audra was astonished. These primordial golden men were so burly that they were over 3 meters tall, which was more than half a head taller than Death Heavenly Tao. In the end, they are primordial golden men. Audra sighed in his heart as he looked at this scene. He now didn't know whether to say that the primordial golden men were too well nourished, or that the current Heavenly Tao little golden men were underdeveloped. When Death Heavenly Tao heard Audra's thoughts, it also felt very aggrieved. This actually had a lot to do with the food they ate. For example, what they ate the most was the expired snacks that Wang Ling had exchanged for them. It would be a miracle if they were underdeveloped. Elsewhere, after grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent Wang Ling a text message, Wang Ling immediately teleported to the entrance of Kaiguang Temple. Survival Heavenly Tao was helping to produce the death substitute talismans, and they were of good quality, so there was no need to worry about them in the short term. At that moment, Wang Ling looked at the rundown temple in front of him with his hands in his trouser pockets. He had seen everything that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had experienced in the temple with his king's eye. This Zen Master Golden Lamp indeed wasn't an ordinary person, and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wouldn't be able to deal with him alone. So Wang Ling felt that it was necessary for him to personally test the waters. Of course, the most important thing was that this Zen Master Golden Lamp seemed to know the whole story. Inside the temple, Zen Master Golden Lamp knocked on the wooden fish. When Wang Ling had appeared at the entrance of the temple, he had already sensed Wang Ling's aura. "Your friend is here." Zen Master Golden Lamp smiled slightly. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sat upright on one side. In the next moment, Zen Master Golden Lamp knocked heavily on the wooden fish in his hand with a dong. In an instant, an incomparably tyrannical wave of spirit power rippled out from the wooden fish. Everything in the temple, including the main door, was covered in a faint golden light. This poor monk has finished the light blessing. Whether your friend can come in or not will depend on his ability. At that moment, Zen Master Golden Lamp was calmly knocking on the wooden fish, brimming with confidence. The light blessing spell that he had become famous for could be said to be invincible in the world. Even Tao Ancestor Wang would be wary of his light blessing spell. Zen Master Golden Lamp laughed in his heart. In this world, ever since Tao Ancestor Wang had entered the infinite cycle of reincarnation like him, his whereabouts had been unknown. It had been a long time since he had used this 100% light blessing spell. When grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had come in earlier, he had only used 5% light blessing spell. Zen Master Golden Lamp was well aware of this. In the present world, it was likely that only the youngsters outside the door were worthy of such treatment. "I'd like to see how much effort it will take for your friend to open this door." Master Golden Lamp smiled. But in the next moment his smile quickly stiffened, because there was a loud boom at the door. Zen Master Golden Lamp didn't have time to react. The 2 doors had already been smashed into bits of wood on the ground. Zen Master Golden Lamp. At the door, Wang Ling raised his index finger and sighed slightly. He hadn't expected that the door would shatter with just 1% of his strength. After all, when he did eye exercises at school and pressed on the Jingming and Sibai points, his strength was at 100%. Chapter 1272. He had actually broken through the door with just 1 finger. The monk had thought that he and the youngster would be evenly matched opponents. But when he saw Wang Ling break through the door with just 1 finger, the feeling of shock that made one's pupils tremble could no longer be described with words. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sat upright on one side. He had never doubted the youngster's strength. Brother Ling was still as strong as ever. It had always been the same from the moment he had met him. To be honest, when Wang Ling's fingers had touched the temple door, he had actually been pleasantly surprised. There had never been an opponent in this world who could make him take things seriously. And this Zen Master Golden Lamp in Kaiguang Temple might be one. But after breaking through the door, the pleasant surprise that had arisen in Wang Ling's heart was immediately extinguished. This humble monk has long heard of Ling Zhenren's great name. If Ling Zhenren can smoothly enter my hall of great strength, this humble monk will tell you everything I know. At that moment, Golden Lamp, who had been knocking on the wooden fish with his eyes closed, finally opened his eyes. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had never had a chance to meet the monk's gaze before. Now he saw Zen Master Golden Lamp open his eyes. They were a pair of intimidating golden eyes, which seemed to have the divine power to wash away all evil in the world. But let's be honest. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still felt that this was far from the shock he had felt when he had first seen the king's eye. Swastika. Wang Ling could only see Master Golden Lamp's back. But he already knew that the other party had opened the swastika, which was said to be something only the supreme saints of Buddhism were qualified to possess. As the supreme saint of Buddhism, Master Golden Lamp had condensed the energy of each of his reincarnations into his pupils. Now he had experienced 3,910 reincarnations. There were 3,910 pupils on that side. Now Wang Ling seemed to understand a little why this Zen Master Golden Lamp was so interested in his king's eye. She was a serious contact lens enthusiast. This swastika was Zen Master Golden Lamp's prized natal item. It could wash away all evil in the world, understand people's reincarnation, and see through their weaknesses. He had condensed his experiences from 3,910 reincarnations into this small swastika. His note was to sort out all the mistakes he had made in these reincarnations, like a collection of wrong answers. Those mistakes in battle, mistakes in positioning, all kinds of wrong combat experience turned into a torrent of history and gathered in Zen Master Golden Lamp's eyes. He firmly remembered these mistakes in his heart. All of this was so that he wouldn't make the same mistake in his next reincarnation. The moment Wang Ling stepped through the doorway, the swastika, which had not been released for a long time, unleashed its divine power at this moment. It resonated with every single tile in the courtyard. Wang Ling stepped on the first tile in the courtyard. This was the pressure of Zen Master Golden Lamp's reincarnation. Wang Ling saw a memory fragment from the monk's first reincarnation. However, this was just a flashback. He saw Luyu knocking on the wooden fish alone. The camera zoomed in on the wooden fish. Wang Ling didn't understand. He took another step forward. The second step was indeed more stressful than before. The further one walked forward, the greater the pressure on the floor tiles in the middle courtyard. The reincarnation pressure contained in the tiles behind him would continue to build up. It was impossible for a person to absorb such an enormous amount of information in such a short period of time. No matter how powerful a person is, it's impossible for them to withstand the memories of 1,000 reincarnations in such a short period of time. Zen Master Golden Lamp smiled slightly. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had come in, he had only been going through the motions. Now that Wang Ling was here, he naturally received him with the highest standard. The swastika concentrated the mental pressure from all his reincarnations and spread it out through the tiles in the courtyard. No one would be able to withstand such a terrifying power. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked out of the courtyard. Although he didn't doubt Wang Ling's strength, it looked like the youngster in front of him had run into some kind of trouble. He walked step by step in the middle of the courtyard, walking very slowly. Senior Immortal, if your friend refuses to admit defeat because of his pride, you can communicate with him and finally pass on the message to this poor monk. This poor monk won't laugh at him. Zen Master Golden Lamp had a triumphant expression on his face. How could he not know how much mental pressure the swastika exerted? The youngster had only just crossed 1/10 of the road. This 1/10 of the road was the mental pressure of 391 reincarnations. He had lived at least 100 years in each reincarnation, and at most thousands of years. Only someone who had experienced this kind of pressure could truly understand. Zen Master Golden Lamp sighed in his heart. Unfortunately, in the end, this youngster wasn't Tao Ancestor Wang. If it had been Tao Ancestor Wang himself, it definitely wouldn't have been so strenuous. Wang Ling had to admit that he was indeed walking very slowly. But the truth was that he didn't feel much mental pressure. This can be seen from his luxuriant hair. He walked very slowly, deliberately stepping on every tile. On one hand, it was for fun. On the other hand, he wanted to investigate the monk's background through the flashbacks of his memories triggered when he stepped on the tiles. Unfortunately, he had stepped on hundreds of tiles, and those fragmented memories couldn't be pieced together into a complete memory. It could only be said that the monk in the Hall of Great Strength indeed had an extraordinary background. But it seemed that he wasn't as powerful as Wang Ling had imagined. He strolled leisurely over every tile, peeking at the flashbacks of each of the monk's lives. The headache he felt wasn't even as much as the pressure he had felt before the final exam for number 60 middle school. This disappointed him from the bottom of his heart. He opened his hand and earth-colored spirit power gathered in his palm. Zen Master Golden Lamp noticed this scene in the courtyard. Very quickly, he realized that the youngster was actually using his spirit energy to absorb the elements of heaven and earth. And imitating the tiles in the courtyard, he had created an identical clay brick. The monk instantly laughed. Do you want this poor monk to integrate his experience of reincarnation into this brick? Wang Ling didn't answer. He didn't have any experience of reincarnation, because this was his first life experience, and it hadn't even caught up to reincarnation. What he had done was to fuse all the experiences he had experienced in the past 16 years into this brick. If he could live to be 1600 years old, then the experience in this brick would be 1% of his life experience. If he could live to be 16,000 years old, then the experience in this brick would be 1,000th of his life experience. Of course, Wang Ling didn't know how long he could live. But compared with his long life, the experiences in his hands were definitely a drop in the ocean. Compared with Zen Master Golden Lamp's 3,910 reincarnations, it was also a drop in the ocean. However, he didn't mind sharing what he had experienced all these years with this Zen Master. After condensing the brick in his hand, Wang Ling threw it at Zen Master Golden Lamp from afar. Insignificant skill. The Zen Master didn't even look at it as he raised his hand and directly caught it. And then there was nothing. The immense mental pressure contained in the memory brick that Wang Ling had thrown directly poured into Zen Master Golden Lamp's mind. In a split second, the Zen Master's whole body twitched, and at the same time, he bled from all his orifices as he trembled like he had been electrocuted. Golden Lamp couldn't believe the terrifying torrent of memories that poured into his mind. That was right, this was a function. His mind was full of functions. Chapter 1273. Master Gold Lamp. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help shouting when he saw the monk in front of him bleeding from all his orifices. Zen Master Golden Lamp wiped the blood off his face. Don't worry, I'm fine. This time Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was truly alarmed. The concentrated spiritual power in that brick. As soon as Wang Ling threw it over, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could already sense it. As a true venerate, he didn't dare to accept it. Just the mental pressure emanating from the brick was enough to make him feel extremely uncomfortable. As for Zen Master Golden Lamp, not only did he reach out to take it, he even held on for about 10 seconds before letting go. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal calculated that 1 second equated to the power of 1 slap in these 10 seconds. Zen Master Golden Lamp had already been hit 10 times by Wang Ling. The key was 10 times. He was still alive. This was what frightened Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal the most. In Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's view, such a tenacious vitality was already unprecedented and unparalleled. However, although Zen Master Golden Lamp had survived, his current condition was obviously not very good. His face was deathly pale, and he looked like he was going to die at any moment, which made Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal extremely worried. Master, can you still hold on? I can still. After saying that, the monk took out a golden pill from his sleeve and threw it into his mouth. This was the golden pill of 9 transformations. a pill refined by the golden lamp in the 2718th life. Originally, the golden lamp had kept it as a precaution in that life. However, starting from the 2718 era, Jin Deng discovered that he seemed to be invincible. In this world, besides Doubtfather Wang, there seemed to be no one else that was a match for him. As for this 9 transformations golden pill, it had been passed down from generation to generation until now. At this time, Jin Deng threw the 9 transformations golden lamp into his mouth, and his internal injuries began to gradually recover. He was right. This young man's injuries were not only true injuries, but also serious injuries. Fortunately, the 9 transformations golden pill he had prepared could ignore the effects of serious injuries. Otherwise, ordinary healing pills would definitely not be able to heal his current injuries. True damage plus heavy injury. Zen Master Golden Lamp was horrified. This person was shockingly similar to Dao Ancestor Wang. But he was sure. Wang Ling wasn't Dao Ancestor Wang himself. Then who exactly was this young man? At that moment, Wang Ling had already crossed 2/3 of the way in the courtyard. The expression on his face was still relaxed. Zen Master Golden Lamp's floor tiles didn't give him any pressure at all. She was able to withstand nearly 10 of his palm strikes without dying. Jin Deng could be considered the first. At that moment, Wang Ling stretched out his hand to draw the reincarnation memory brick in front of Jin Deng back into his palm. Since he had already created this memory brick, he would be able to do it. Wang Ling felt that they shouldn't be wasted. In the future, he could use it to determine if the other party was an expert. If he was a real expert, he should be like Zen Master Golden Lamp, who was able to survive a few seconds of contact. He carved the number 10 on the brick with his index finger, and then put the memory brick into the king's eye. This represented the longest time the memory brick had been held. Zen Master Golden Lamp's current time was 10 seconds, which was also the record holder. Wang Ling wanted to see if anyone else could break this record in the future. This penniless monk has reincarnated for 1,000 lifetimes, but this penniless monk actually encountered a wall here. At that moment, Zen Master Golden Lamp stopped striking the wooden fish. Although the 9 transformations golden pill had stopped his injuries, striking the wooden fish was also a form of cultivation in itself. His wooden fish was called Heavenly Fish, and was a magic artifact that was bound to the body for cultivation. Every time he struck it, his body would simultaneously suffer a blow of 100 billion tons. In essence, it was a process of tempering the body, but in his current state, he already couldn't strike it anymore. If he didn't seize the opportunity to rest, he would die with another strike. In fact, these words in Zen Master Golden Lamp's heart saved his life once again. Although Wang Ling hadn't arrived at the Hall of Great Strength, he had always been curious about the wooden fish in Zen Master Golden Lamp's hand. He had wanted to take this opportunity to strike it. But since the wooden fish was bound to Master Golden Lamp's body, Wang Ling felt that he shouldn't continue being mischievous. If he wasn't careful and smashed the wooden fish, Master Golden Lamp might explode in front of him. With one foot in the Hall of Great Strength, Wang Ling compared the pressure inside and outside. He indeed felt a lot more relaxed. But the difference actually wasn't that big. This mental pressure was like removing the weight of a school bag. This little benefactor. Who on earth are you? Zen Master Golden Lamp looked at Wang Ling. The question finally returned to the question of, who the hell are you? Wang Ling fell silent. He didn't even know who he was. Until today, he still hadn't found the answer to this question. This poor monk has never been so eager to know the answer in all these years. At that moment, Zen Master Golden Lamp turned his gaze to Wang Ling. At the same time, he was already mentally prepared. As long as he could know the answer, even if he ended up dead in this life, he would be content. Master, I may not die in this life, there's a 50-50 chance of that happening. But we came to find you because, I know. The monk laughed and kept them guessing. So I've already left the answer, which you will only receive after I die. Those are my brother's eyes. I don't want the eyes. The monk shook his head. He had already experienced Wang Ling's strength. He completely understood. He couldn't afford this pair of beautiful eyes. Zen Master Golden Lamp sighed slightly. So now I've changed my mind. I only ask that this benefactor Wang stand in front of me, and let me have a look. Can you see clearly, Master? Not necessarily, but I want to try, said Zen Master Golden Lamp. It was clear that the monk was a very stubborn person. He wouldn't give up until he achieved his goal. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Wang Ling shrugged with an indifferent expression. Even he couldn't see through this secret, let alone the monk in front of him. Then I'll start. Zen Master Golden Lamp smiled. He nodded at Wang Ling. The next moment, the Buddhist light of the swastika shone from his eyes again. In an instant, Zen Master Golden Lamp's eyes were bloodshot. This one glance contained the power of his reincarnation from 3,000 lives. His vision transcended time and space, and he saw through the Milky Way. Then Zen Master Golden Lamp closed his eyes. One of his swastikas had already been scrapped. At the same time, there was an explosion in the atrium. On the ground, the 3,000 memory bricks that symbolized Zen Master Golden Lamp's 3,000 lives shattered with a loud bang and turned into dust. Zen Master Golden Lamp had never dreamed that this would happen. He had used up the cultivation of 3,000 lives. In the end, he ended up in a chaotic world of light and darkness. He found the outline of a figure. Chapter 1274. In the atrium, the bricks that symbolized Zen Master Golden Lamp's reincarnation history exploded one after another. He had spent the cultivation of 3,000 lifetimes, but he had only managed to catch a glimpse of the outline. Such a thing really made people feel a little sad. Wang Ling stretched out his hand, intending to repair the broken memory bricks in the courtyard. He hadn't stopped the golden lamp from spying on him, because he wanted to know exactly what sort of existence he was. Because of this, Zen Master Golden Lamp lost one of his eyes, and his cultivation was greatly damaged. Wang Ling felt that he shouldn't put all the blame on the golden lamp. But at that moment, the monk stretched out his hand to stop him. Zen Master Golden Lamp shook his head with a wry smile. I've lived 3,910 lives, and it's only in this life that I realize that I'm not invincible. The loss of my cultivation is a lesson that I must learn. There is no need for Reverend to lend a hand. Monk coughed twice. He reached out his hand and brushed his eyes. His ruined pupils were restored to their normal state. All he had left now was a type R. The crippled one would have to start cultivating from scratch. But the monk didn't regret being able to fight a true expert like Wang Ling. Even if he was injured, it was a glorious scar for the monk. Zen Master Golden Lamp smiled and said, I feel that this life of mine is going to be more exciting than any of my previous lives. There were only 910 bricks left in his atrium. Right now, he was looking forward to passing away and turning his memories of this life into new bricks. Then, he would lay them in this courtyard and become one with the 910 bricks. Grandmaster, can you tell us what's going on with Miss Lotus Sun now? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked at that moment. This was the reason why they had come here to see Zen Master Jin Deng. Wang Ling wasn't too surprised that Zen Master Golden Lamp knew so much. Although his combat power was stronger than Zen Master Golden Lamp's. However, his experience was still not as rich as Zen Master Golden Lamp. The mental pressure in the memory brick was great, but it did not mean that he had rich experience. The experience of 3,910 lives was placed here, and the monk knew more than him. This was also in the process of cleaning up. He was only a 16-year-old baby. In fact, Tyrant wasn't completely confident about this matter. But after spying on Wang Ling's true identity just now Jin Deng already had his answer. Although he could only catch a glimpse of the outline and the chaotic world. However, based on the clues he had, the monk had reason to believe that what happened to the girl might be related to a mysterious place. Do you know where Tao ancestor Wang, who established the heavenly Tao all those years ago, established the heavenly Tao? Zen Master Golden Lamp said. Before the way of heaven was finalized, it was said that Tao ancestor Wang had conducted countless experiments to ensure that the way of heaven he designed would eventually benefit all cultivators. The heavenly Tao even has a testing ground? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling were astonished. Legend has it that the experimental site was formed from a strand of chaos energy. It is a place with a high concentration of spiritual energy. It's difficult for ordinary creatures to survive in that place. The monk said. Even though the heavenly law testing ground is only a rumor, this poor monk can guarantee that this place really exists. What's in the lab? They're all useless heavenly Tao golden men that are filled with evil and darkness. These gold men were all failed experiments. The Tao ancestor created them, but he could not bear to destroy them. Both the palm and the back of the hand are meat. Hearing this, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed in his heart. Just like that, these heavenly Tao golden men who weren't destroyed were left in that experimental site forever, sealed inside by Tao ancestor Wang. Zen Master Golden Lamp said. And this place is also known as the Unspeakable. The Unspeakable. This was the first time Wang Ling had heard of such a place. It's not that the heavenly Tao golden men of this generation have no memory of this place, but that the Tao ancestor was determined to hide it forever. Thus, the Unspeakable spell was set up. As long as the heavenly Tao golden men think of this place, they will temporarily forget everything about it. The Great Shielding Spell? Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and asked telepathically. The monk smiled. Zhenren is right. The Unspeakable spell is indeed similar to the Great Shielding Spell. The Great Shielding Spell may have been derived from Tao ancestor Wang's Unspeakable spell. But Master, there's still something I don't understand. Senior Immortal, please speak. Why are you so sure that Miss Sun's matter has something to do with the Unspeakable? I have two deductions. First, the ancient golden man who appeared next to Miss Sun is probably a failed experiment product from the Unspeakable. That girl has now become a child of the void. And as the key to the void gate, there's actually a tremendous amount of power hidden in her. Golden Lamp's words were astonishing, and he was very clear about the ins and outs of the matter. Wang Ling couldn't help but marvel at his deduction ability. This golden lamp was indeed different from the small fries he had dealt with before. He was a capable monk. Wang Ling didn't intend to believe Golden Lamp. After a moment of silence, the monk continued. Those golden men robbed her because they wanted to use the blade of the void to tear open the seal of the Unspeakable. That's a seal set up by Tao ancestor Wang. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was shocked. As far as I know, the children of the void do indeed have this ability. The monk said. Previously, the Master of the Void went through so much trouble to search for the children of the void. I'm afraid their real purpose wasn't to invade Earth. Not to invade? They wanted to protect the children of the void. The monk said, as long as the children of the void return to the void, the curse on Miss Sun won't work, and the ancient golden men of the Unspeakable won't be able to run to the void world to find her. Hearing this, Wang Ling was suddenly enlightened. So this was what the Master of the Void meant when he said that the children of the void would eventually return to the void. At this point, Wang Ling had learned most of the truth from Golden Lamp. This so-called yin and yang death calamity was the root of the disaster left behind by the ancient golden men of the Unspeakable. So here was the crux of the problem. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pondered for a bit, then finally asked, Master, apart from returning to the void and becoming part of it, is there any other way for Miss Sun to get rid of the ancient golden men? Of course there is a way, and I'm afraid that Ling Zhenren is the only one who can do it now. At that moment, the monk turned to look at Wang Ling. Wang Ling looked at him, his expression unruffled. The monk. The way is to wipe out the entire Unspeakable in one fell swoop. Chapter 1275. Wipe them all out in one go? It was indeed an extremely simple and crude answer. But regarding this matter, Jin Deng actually had something to say. The Unspeakable place. This poor monk has actually tried to visit it many times, but not once has he been able to enter it, Jin Deng said. He had the experience of visiting the Unspeakable place many times, but he always got lost halfway and never even stepped through the gate. What about the return spell? Wang Ling asked telepathically. He knew that the Death Heavenly Tao had already captured the ancient gold men. If he used the return spell to teleport back with the ancient gold men, he felt that it would not be difficult to enter the Unspeakable land. Reverend, your thinking is too simple. This penniless monk had also used this return sending art in the past. However, the situation is much more complicated than I imagined, said the monk. The Unspeakable was derived from chaos, and it was difficult for ordinary cultivators to walk in that kind of space for a long time. Even immortal Jin Yuan, who had the ability to roam the Milky Way, couldn't avoid it. Only cultivators from the god's domain are allowed to stay there for a while, and the time limit is no more than 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Grenade-throwing senior immortal was lost in thought. This time was about the same as Ultraman's transformation. It was too short. Just like Kuxuan. There's nothing we can do. If we get lost in the primal chaos, we'll never be able to come back. The golden lamp shook its head. In short, the structure of the unspeakable land was like an egg. The eggshell was like a boundary, the egg white was the chaotic circle, and the egg yolk was the unspeakable place. Even if a normal cultivator accidentally entered, they would only enter the range of the egg white. He could only stay there for 3 minutes at most. It was almost impossible to touch the yolk layer. Tyrant recalled the scene when he found the unspeakable place in the past. He couldn't even enter the core yolk layer. How long can Master stay in the egg white layer? Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked curiously. Not long, just a little bit more time than normal cultivators, the monk said modestly. How long? 3 hours? 30 days. If it's Ling Jinren, I'm afraid it'll be even longer, said monk. He felt that Wang Ling could stay in there for at least 300 years, Jin Deng said. But even this penniless monk has yet to reach the core layer. Because of the restriction? Asked Wang Ling. This was the only possibility he could think of. That's right. Jin Deng nodded. Unless Dao ancestor Wang had set up a restriction back then. Otherwise, the return skill would not have failed. As the founder of the heavenly Dao, it was too easy for him to set up such a restriction. As long as the great teleportation spell's authority was turned off in the unspeakable land, no one would be able to use heavenly Dao spells to directly arrive there. Thus, Wang Ling's wish to use Lord Ma to directly teleport to the unspeakable fell through. However, he still felt that there was another way. After all, he not only possessed the power of the heavenly Dao created by Dao ancestor Wang, Divine Dao, Fate Dao, Shadow Dao. There had to be one that suited him. In my opinion, if we want to enter the unspeakable land and completely destroy this place, the key is to break the restriction. The monk frowned. He opened his hand and gathered his memories of entering the unspeakable land into a ball of spiritual energy on his palm. Wang Ling and Grenade-throwing reached out to touch it. That memory rushed into their minds like a three-dimensional movie. In his memory, Tyrant was in a chaotic world where light and darkness interweaved. The structure of the space here was extremely complex, and everything was falling apart. When the monk had mistakenly entered this place back then, his kasaya had been torn to shreds, and he had been naked when he entered this space. Wang Ling and Grenade-throwing's eyes hurt a little, and they hurriedly withdrew their hands. My apologies, this poor monk needs to deal with it a little. Realizing his gaffe, Golden Lamp's old face flushed red. He had almost forgotten that he had mistakenly entered the chaotic circle of the unspeakable land back then. The scene of his Taoist robe being invaded by the power of chaos and directly being torn to shreds. After dealing with the memory magic ball again, Wang Ling and Grenade-throwing senior immortal touched it again. Wang Ling saw that the monk in front of him was covered in a thick layer of mosaic, which instantly made the whole scene even stranger. Then the monk wandered back and forth in the chaotic circle. It took him several days before he finally found the core. Is this the unspeakable land? In the memory, Golden Lamp looked at a place in front of him that looked very much like a floating island in the universe, which was wrapped in a faint golden film of light. The powerful power of heavenly Dao that emanated from that place was breathtaking. At that time, the monk already knew what kind of place he had broken into. This was the heavenly Dao test field that Dao ancestor had left behind back then. Countless sealed but powerful evil heavenly Daos were locked up in there. Driven by his curiosity, the monk instinctively wanted to take a look. Given his ability to shrink the ground into an inch and travel 10,000 li in one step, it shouldn't have been difficult for him to break into the unspeakable land. However, the unspeakable land was clearly right in front of him, but he couldn't get any closer. Red-faced, the monk looked like he had done everything he could, but from beginning to end he couldn't move an inch forward. The unspeakable land was so close at hand, and so far away that it was hard for him to imagine it, at that moment. The monk put away his memory ball and said with emotion, Ling Jinren and Senior Immortal saw that scene back then. And it's still hard for this poor monk to forget it. The unspeakable land was clearly so close to this poor monk, but this poor monk was like a monkey trapped in the Five Fingers Mountain, and was unable to take that step forward to reach the heart of the land. Looking at Master's memory, you used a variety of movement techniques, but in the end, it seemed that no matter how you moved, you still stayed where you were. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Could this unspeakable land just be an illusion? Like a mirage, it looks very close, but is actually very far away. This poor monk understands Senior Immortal's meaning. Back then this poor monk also had a similar idea. Jin Deng said, so after I confirmed the location of the unspeakable land, I made sufficient preparations not long after and planned to try it a second time. It took me 20 days, and the situation was the same as before. The monk really couldn't use words to describe the concept of 20 days. He had used the shrinking ground into an inch spell to travel like crazy for 20 days. Based on a normal journey, in 20 days he would have already made a round trip to and fro the Milky Way 20 times. It had taken immortal Jin Yuan 1,000 years to travel the entire Milky Way outside the Milky Way. The contrast was very obvious. So what on earth is the restriction on the unspeakable land? This poor monk thinks it's probably some kind of restriction set up by Dao Ancestor. Jin Deng said, I wonder if Ling Jinren and Senior Immortal played a keyword warning game. Before the two of them talk, they first decide which forbidden words they can't use, and then talk to each other. Whoever mentions the forbidden words loses. Based on this poor Daoist's many years of speculation, the restriction set up by Dao Ancestor should be similar to this game. Could it be that monks can't enter? It's not that this poor monk hasn't thought of this, so in 3241, this poor monk deliberately kept his hair long and elegant in the end, he still wasn't able to enter. Men can't enter. This penniless monk tried it in the 3903 era. In this life, this poor monk deliberately reincarnated as a woman. This is also the only life in which this poor monk has changed gender. Also, at the beginning this poor monk wasn't used to it, and was always standing and peeing. Chapter 1276. To enter the unspeakable land, one had to guess what kind of restriction Dao Ancestor Wang had set up. Based on Golden Lamp's 1,000 lives of reincarnation, the monk had already eliminated a lot of wrong options in his infinite time. Unfortunately, he had never found the right answer. In the year 2908, this penniless monk guessed that the Dao Ancestor's restriction might not allow one to enter the Forbidden Land by flying. Therefore, this penniless monk chose the nearest spot, and used constant backflips to enter the unspeakable land. In the end I failed. In 2909, this poor monk guessed that Dao Ancestor's restriction might not allow people with single eyelids to enter. For this reason, this poor monk poured strength into my fingernails and personally cut off my own double eyelids, but in the end I still failed. Master, I don't think there's any need to talk about failure. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal did his best to keep smiling. He felt that if he continued listening to Golden Lamp, his image of the monk as an eminent monk would completely collapse. At that moment, the situation seemed to be stuck again. The monk knew the exact location of the unspeakable land. But even if he had the ability to destroy the entire forbidden area, if he couldn't enter it, it was all empty talk. Shenren, this poor monk has something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. Golden Lamp suddenly said at that moment. He had a serious expression on his face, as if he was calculating something. The unspeakable land. This could be considered one of the few regrets in the monk's life. For thousands of years, he had been trying to break through and challenge the barrier, but he had failed again and again. The monk was already a little disheartened. After witnessing Wang Ling's power, he felt that if he combined it with his accumulated experience, they might be able to work together. For this reason, he quickly began to formulate a plan in his mind. What he was about to say to Wang Ling now was one of his plans. Wang Ling's eyes widened slightly as he looked at Golden Lamp with an expression that said he was all ears. Ling Jinren, to tell you the truth, If you and I work together, we might really be able to break through the chaos circle outside the forbidden area. The monk said, but there's also a risk. Judging from the sudden appearance of the ancient gold men, it's likely that there are already some evil ancient gold men in the forbidden area who have used their own methods to escape the seal. If we force our way through now, there's a high chance that our home will be directly raided. Raided. This poor monk used to think that as long as I stood guard on earth, foreign enemies wouldn't dare cause trouble. The monk sighed and said, later I realized that this penniless monk was overthinking. Those ancient gold men are not stupid. They have been operating quietly and have not launched a large-scale invasion. It's only because this poor monk and Ling Jinren are on Earth that they can sense great power, so they haven't taken any large-scale actions. Grandmaster, do you mean that if you and Brother Ling break the forbidden area together, those ancient gold men will directly attack? Very likely. The monk said, this penniless monk's predictions are almost never wrong. In 1,000 lifetimes, this penniless monk has only been wrong once. May I ask Grandmaster, which time was it? Asked grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Just now. I thought I could beat Ling Jinren, but I guessed the beginning, not the end. Therefore my opinion is, before Ling Jinren and I work together to break through the level, we need to help other people transcend their tribulations. The monk said, we need to help some trustworthy brothers so that they can form a group to transcend their tribulations and ascend successfully. Wang Ling. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about this before. The main thing was that it would cause a huge commotion, which Wang Ling was very worried about. Although the consumption of spirit qi on Earth had already reached a point where it could be reversed, when someone advanced, the consumption of spirit qi would gradually increase. This was also the purpose of the true immortal convention between countries. By limiting the growth of realms, the pressure on the consumption of spirit qi would be reduced. If Ling Jinren trusts this poor monk will be fully responsible for this matter. Ling Jinren only needs to provide assistance from the side. The monk smiled. The true immortal convention has been in place for so many years that tradition should have been broken long ago. This Earth needs to complete an upgrade. What changes will there be after the upgrade? True immortals will be further liberated. Finally, with time, Earth might be able to establish a channel with the domain of the gods. The monk said, of course there are also unchanging factors. That is, even if the upgrade is completed, there might still be no one who can beat Ling Jinren. Saying this, Golden Lamp couldn't help sighing. Jinren, how lonely. Wang Ling. Elsewhere, Death Heavenly Dao was conscientiously performing its duty as it stood guard in front of Lotus Sun's bed. They wouldn't let those ancient gold men who had scuttled out continue to cause trouble. After the second wave was over, Death Heavenly Dao used the Death Note to personally capture those 3 ancient gold men. For a long time, the hospital was calm and peaceful. Lotus Sun would still do sit-ups from time to time. But as long as Death Heavenly Dao was here, the girl wouldn't have to taste the pain of having her soul crudely stolen by the ancient gold men. The situation looks stable, but it's actually far from it. Death Heavenly Dao couldn't help sighing. He had stayed here to prevent the ancient gold men from stealing the girl's soul, in order to alleviate her pain. But that didn't stop this inexplicable yin-yang death curse from continuing to wreak havoc on her body. Furthermore, he had already summoned the 3 ancient gold men to interrogate them. In the end, Death Heavenly Dao didn't understand a single word the ancient gold men said. He was completely unable to communicate with them. Your Excellency, do you know why this is happening? The Heavenly Dao language has been reformed many times, and is no longer the same as before. They're speaking the most primitive version of the Heavenly Dao language, and they even have a local accent. It would be a miracle if anyone could understand them. Death Heavenly Dao gave an example. It's like a foreigner who has lived in the Northeast speaking Wenzhou dialect. When all sorts of things are mixed together, it's like the whispering of the devil. In the current situation, Death Heavenly Dao didn't dare leave Lotus Sun's side at all. He was afraid that if he left, these ancient gold men would take advantage of the situation to attack again. But even if he caught these 3 gold men now, it didn't seem to be of any use. The language barrier was a huge problem. Just when he was at his wit's end, The girl lying quietly in the medical cabin in front of him was actually starting to change again. Your Excellency, Death Heavenly Tao, are you seeing this? Audjua's eyes were filled with horror. He rubbed his eyes repeatedly as he observed what was happening to the girl's body. I'm seeing it, it's not an illusion. Death Heavenly Tao also started to get nervous, because Lotus Sun's body seemed to be turning transparent. Chapter 1277. Death Heavenly Tao and Audjua hadn't expected the girl to gradually become transparent. But very quickly, Death Heavenly Tao realized what was going on. I never thought the legend would actually be true. What legend? Audjua asked anxiously. It said that in order to prevent people from being resurrected without limit through means like the death substitute talisman, Tao Ancestor deliberately set up a secret spell. So, I purposely set up a secret technique. As long as the resurrection exceeds a certain number of times, the existence of the resurrected will decrease. Decrease her presence. Audjua was astonished. When her presence decreases to the end, Miss Sun will be completely transparent. In theory, she won't be considered dead, but no one will be able to touch or hear her, and no one will be able to hear what she says to other people. Then what's the difference between this and being dead? The difference is that she's not on the Heavenly Tao's death list, and doesn't even have the chance to be reincarnated. She can only drift in the world forever as a spirit of nothingness. Audjua. Isn't that about the same as a hollow spirit? Death Heavenly Tao sighed. If that's the case, she might as well become a hollow spirit. At least a hollow spirit is a complete life form. Is there a way to stop it? Audjua hadn't expected this at all. This girl's presence in the book was already low enough. Now, she was actually forced to make the Heavenly Tao lower its presence. How tragic. Unless you're a Heavenly Tao whitelist user, you can't use resurrection methods without limit. Death Heavenly Tao slowly shook its head and stared at the girl in the medical cabin, whose transparency was gradually decreasing. Also, in order to prevent cheating, the whitelist has a 48-hour review period. That is to say, even if Miss Sun is added to the whitelist now, it's too late. Her body will become completely transparent in the next 48 hours. Saturday, November 28th. It was a plan to destroy the unspeakable land and exterminate the evil Heavenly Tao to save Lotus Sunday. Wang Ling, Golden Lamp and Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal discussed it together and came to an official agreement. The entire plan was divided into 3 parts. First, find the ancient Heavenly Tao lurking on Earth and temporarily block the Yin and Yang death tribulation. Second, complete the upgrade of Earth and train many reliable cultivators to guard Earth. Third, the monk would lead the way, and Wang Ling would break through the unspeakable land together with Wang Ling, thus cutting off the source of the Yin and Yang death tribulation. With the monk handling everything from the outside, Wang Ling just needed to support him from behind. Among the people Wang Ling had come into contact with so far, this was probably the most reliable person in all aspects. But there was something else he didn't understand. He had always thought that the person who had divined Lotus Sun's Yin and Yang death calamity had been the monk himself. However, after careful questioning, the monk said that he had never read the girl's fortune before. Now the question was, who was that fortune teller from back then? Sunny Yuan was probably the only one who knew about this. Wang Ling wasn't a meddlesome person, but this matter concerned a girl's life. He activated his king's eye and peeked at the appearance of the fortune teller in Old Man Sun's memory. In the end, the king's eye could only see darkness. He didn't see anything. Did they tamper with it in advance? Wang Ling frowned. His direction had been wrong from the start, because he had always mistakenly thought that the golden lamp was that fortune teller. He was one step too late. Instead, that mysterious fortune teller had covered up this part of his memory. At that moment, Wang Ling's emotions were exceptionally complicated. As expected, there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons on Earth. It seemed that apart from the monk, there was also a mysterious expert. The other party had actually been able to predict this step and make preparations in advance, which at least proved that this person wasn't weaker than the monk. On the day that Wang Ling and Jin Deng met, The monk was led by grenade-throwing senior immortal to the hospital. When the group of specialists and doctors gathered at the hospital saw the monk, they all had sorrowful expressions on their faces. It's all my fault. My medical skills weren't good enough. I couldn't save Miss Lotus-san. It looks like we have to continue learning. Only then can we save more people. The moment the doctors saw the monk, they all looked as if they had been enlightened, and some even huddled together to wipe away their tears. Grenade-throwing senior immortal didn't understand. Why are you all so sad? Isn't there still hope for Miss Sun? One of the doctors was blank for a moment before he asked, so you didn't bring the monk here to perform a ritual? Jean Deng and grenade-throwing senior immortal. This was a serious occasion, and grenade-throwing senior immortal had been specially trained for it. He absolutely wouldn't laugh. Thus, he tried very hard to keep a straight face as he explained Master Jean Deng's background to the many specialists and doctors present. This Zen Master Jean Deng isn't an ordinary person. He might have a way to save Miss Lotus Sunday. A monk? Many of the doctors had doubtful looks on their faces. They were the titans of the medical world. But if even they were helpless, how much ability did a wild monk who had popped up out of nowhere have to save a girl's life? In their view, this was utter nonsense. Senior Immortal, I think this might be a little too hasty. We can understand Mr. Sun's feelings. The first person to object was Director Lu Ping, who felt that it was better to be cautious. The monk had a smile on his face and didn't take the doctor's words to heart at all. He very much understood what everyone was thinking. After all, he had lived in seclusion for so many years, and few people knew his Buddhist name. Without understanding the situation, it was indeed possible to regard him as a swindler. But when all was said and done, Master Jean Deng was Master Jean Deng. The profoundness of a monk's state of mind wasn't something that ordinary people could imagine. A monk doesn't lie. Let me show you what I can do first. Jean Deng smiled, then reached out and stroked the shoulder of a male doctor. Benefactor, you suffer from an unmentionable disease in your left shoulder, due to constant tiredness. Because of the delay in your work, the disease can't be cured. On rainy days, your left shoulder hurts so much that you can't control it, and it can only be alleviated by dancing at home. Is this penniless monk right? Master, how did you know? The doctor turned pale with shock. Don't panic. I've just blessed your left shoulder, and it's fine now. You don't have to live the life of dancing alone at home at night anymore. Everyone. At that moment, the monk was showing off his superb skills in the hospital's conference room. Everyone began to change their previous attitude, and they began to become enthusiastic. Master, because of my work, my head has always been very bald. Say no more, benefactor. You've lost your hair while saving the dying and helping the injured. This poor monk will return it to you right away. Master, I always come home late because of my work, and every time I come home late, my wife makes me kneel on durians. Please touch my knees. Benefactor, there's no need to say more. For this poor monk, it's nothing. Master, because I often stay up late. Well, my wife and I have always wanted a child. Please touch mine. At that moment, the monk glanced indifferently at the doctor's lower body and shook his head. Benefactor, it's not that this poor monk doesn't want to help you, but this matter isn't your problem. Everyone. Chapter 1278. The monk's extraordinary ability to consecrate himself became the focus of the whole hospital for a moment. Seeing that more and more people were coming to him for consecration, Jean Deng smiled slightly and put on his attitude. Benefactors, this humble monk is here to save a life, which requires everyone's full cooperation and unity. Once it's done, anyone who has made a contribution can come to this humble monk's temple to find me. This humble monk has plenty of time to consecrate all of you. After saying that, the monk bowed to the crowd. Thank you, Master. At this point, the people who had been waiting in line for the consecration all understood. It was indeed inappropriate for them to be lining up for the consecration. After all, they had been specially invited here to discuss the girl's condition. The consecration had come to an end for the time being. In the conference room, The monk then turned his gaze to the girl lying quietly in the medical cabin on the screen. He saw that Death Heavenly Dao and Audiobook were standing guard next to her. And with a pinch of his fingers, he understood what had happened. The monk put his palms together and said to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, "Senior Immortal, I'll have to trouble you to organize the scene. I'm going to Miss Sun's ward to take a look." "Thank you, Master." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded, not daring to slack off in the slightest. Then the monk turned around and his entire body turned into an incorporeal shadow. In the next moment, he directly appeared in the ward, which startled Death Heavenly Dao. "Who are you?" Death Heavenly Dao was especially nervous when someone suddenly burst into the ward. Especially when he saw that it was a monk, he panicked even more. As soon as he saw the monk, he couldn't help associating him with transcendence. "Not good. It's an expert. Protect Miss Sun." He almost subconsciously wanted to protect Lotus Sun, and was going to directly attack the monk in front of him. But to Death Heavenly Dao's horror, he found that the spirit power he had just channeled was like a block of ice being roasted at high temperature. It had already completely melted in his palm before it could condense. Death Heavenly Dao immediately thought of a situation, and his expression turned extremely solemn. "Who on earth are you? It's been a while since I last saw Mr. Death, so it's normal that you don't remember me." The monk smiled at Death Heavenly Dao. This humble monk was selected to be on the Heavenly Dao whitelist in 1289. "So it's Mr. Golden Lamp." Death Heavenly Dao instantly recalled something that seemed to have happened a long time ago. There were only a handful of users on the Heavenly Axiom's whitelist. And this Zen Master Golden Lamp was the first person in history to enter the whitelist of the Heavenly Path. Of course, Death Heavenly Dao still had a fresh memory of this. However, due to Zen Master Golden Lamp's continuous reincarnation, his appearance changed in each life. Now that they had met again after countless years, Death Heavenly Dao could no longer recognize Zen Master Golden Lamp's face from his appearance alone. Ling Zhenren asked this poor monk to come. The monk said at that moment. This was an expected answer, and neither Death Heavenly Dao nor Audiobook were too surprised. Previously, Death Heavenly Dao had heard that Wang Ling had personally tried to ask for help from an expert. But he didn't expect that this expert was actually Jin Deng. The monk smiled. A few hours ago, this poor monk fought with Ling Zhenren, and then decided to help him deal with this matter. Death Heavenly Dao said, "I see." Tyrant scratched his head. "Aren't you going to ask about the outcome of the duel?" Death Heavenly Dao. "In any case, it's definitely Mr. Golden Lamp who will be beaten up." He had wanted to save face for the monk, which was why he had deliberately not mentioned this matter. But who would have thought that this monk was so big-hearted that he didn't care about face at all? "AI, why is it that even you can see the outcome clearly, but this poor monk is actually so arrogant?" The monk sighed sincerely at Death Heavenly Dao's words. He didn't regret challenging Wang Ling. He just felt that his blind confidence had been a little stupid. Seeing the monk's melancholy, Death Heavenly Dao could only comfort him. The onlooker sees the game more clearly than the onlooker. "Master, there's no need to take it to heart." The monk was tired. But he hadn't forgotten his mission. He had come here for official business. This yin and yang death tribulation was caused by the ancient golden men who escaped, and the source of the death tribulation is that unspeakable place. Said the monk. Unspeakable place. Death Heavenly Dao's pupils shook violently at this term. To the new generation of Heavenly Dao, this was a familiar yet unfamiliar term. The number of Heavenly Dao golden men who knew about this was even fewer. Apart from the 6 main Heavenly Daos who still had some residual memories, the other Heavenly Daos had almost forgotten about this place. It looks like you've remembered. Who would have thought that Dao ancestors' benevolence back then would become today's hidden danger? After all, the palm and the back of the hand are both flesh and blood. You can say that Dao ancestor is a benevolent person. But based on this poor monk's understanding of Dao ancestor, there must be a deeper meaning behind this. At that moment, the monk turned to the girl and took out a magic treasure from the sleeve of his kasaya. His sleeve was like a dimensional pocket, also known as the universe in the sleeve, which contained all the magic treasures he had collected since his 3,910 lives. This was a huge treasure trove. What's this? Death Heavenly Tao asked as he stared at the golden flower the golden lamp had taken out. This is the Buddha Golden Lotus. It's specially used to seal souls. Miss Sun's soul has been affected by the death tribulation and will leave her body from time to time. It's better to store her soul in the golden lotus, said the monk. The Buddha Golden Lotus was a divine object. It was comparable to a heavenly Tao magic treasure. It contained the monk's cultivation of 100 lives. The monk had originally intended to use it for himself. With this golden lotus in hand, he could prevent all kinds of accidents. But now, he wanted to join hands with Wang Ling to explore the mysteries of the unspeakable land. It was a place he had never been able to enter even after spending 1,000 lives. The monk felt that exchanging 100 lives worth of cultivation for a ticket to the unspeakable land was a very good deal. After entering the Buddha Golden Lotus, the girl's soul would be temporarily sealed in the Golden Lotus. It could temporarily avoid the effects of the yin and yang death tribulation. However, once the Buddha Golden Lotus absorbed this cursed soul, the spirit energy sealed inside would start to run out. 100 lives worth of cultivation could only be exchanged for 100 days at most. Thus, they had to solve the problem of the unspeakable land within 100 days. The monk was a little worried. He didn't know if they could make it in time. What about the body? Without the soul, it will rot. Audiobook asked at that moment. That's easy. At that moment, Jean Deng opened the medical cabin and reached out to touch the girl's forehead. Then a ray of golden light entered the girl's body. She's fine, I've blessed her. Master, what should we do next? Someone must guard Miss Sun's body day and night. Next, this poor monk will personally invite Star Lord of Divine Tao Star. If we want to upgrade Earth, we'll need Divine Tao Star's help, said Jean Deng. After saying that, he handed the Buddha Golden Lotus to Death Heavenly Tao and took another step forward. The monk's magic was unimaginably profound. In the next moment, he shrank the ground to an inch and traversed countless light years in one step to arrive on Divine Tao Star. Chapter 1279. When the monk appeared on Divine Tao Star, Star-Lord was receiving treatment. Yes, psychotherapy. This was the aftereffect of his last fight with Wang Ling. Divine Tao Star had originally relied on devouring other planets to forcibly absorb alien civilizations into its star core to expand in the universe. Unfortunately, Star-Lord's plan was ultimately completely dispelled by Wang Ling. As an academician of the Magical Treasure Academy of Sciences, and one of Dopigua's uncles, Guoping also served as an ambassador for the establishment of diplomatic relations. Responsible for the peaceful establishment of diplomatic relations between Earth and Divine Tao Star. Although it was called a peaceful diplomatic relationship, Divine Tao Star was in fact unilaterally assisting Earth by providing it with more alien technology. He had been a grand alien overlord back then, but now in order to survive, he had been forced to become a wholesale boss of alien black technology. Star-Lord's Tao heart collapsed at this kind of disparity. Now that the monk had directly appeared in front of Star-Lord, who was undergoing psychotherapy, he was so scared that he almost fainted. Tyrant couldn't help but sigh at this scene. In the end, this was still caused by his insufficient cultivation. He had also been beaten by Wang Ling. Although the monk reflected on himself after being beaten up, it wasn't to the extent of being autistic. The greatest benefit of being able to fight against a strong opponent was the post-battle summary. The stronger the opponent, the more one would discover their own shortcomings. If he kept staring at his failure, it was only natural that his Tao heart would collapse. The monk had also heard about Wang Ling's previous battle on Divine Tao Star. It was just that he hadn't expected Star-Lord's heart to be so fragile. How long has he been like this? Jean Deng looked at the dispirited and listless Star-Lord who had fainted, and asked the little girl with natural curls next to him. He used his remaining xian to see through the little girl's true form. She was an 8-winged god. The throne that the divine realm had originally used to guide Star-Lord had been split in half by Jingbai, so they had sent a cute 8-winged god to assist Star-Lord in his work. Tyrant sighed in his heart. With such a lovely girl accompanying him day and night, what was there to shut himself up about? He had always wanted to take a female monk as his disciple. He's been like this for a long time. Ever since he lost, he's been getting worse day by day. I've been counseling him every day, but it's useless. The girl with natural curls sighed. What kind of tutoring do you do? The monk was curious. It means repeatedly showing him the video of himself getting beaten up. This is called aversion therapy. Oh. The monk was horrified. The girl with the natural scroll looked very cute, but she was clearly not an ordinary person. Were you sent by Lingzhenren? Eight-winged god, who had transformed into a girl with natural curls, suddenly asked with big eyes. She was wearing a snow-white robe, and her whole body exuded an immortal aura. Using the words of the young people on Earth to label her, she was like a little angel, as expected of a character sent by the Shinto. The monk nodded and performed a Buddhist salute to the girl with natural curls. He could tell that the girl with natural curls was not an ordinary person. At the very least, he had an important position in the god realm. Moreover, the wings behind the girl's back had yet to fully grow. In the immortal world, strength was determined by the number of wings one had. There were 100-winged gods and even 1,000-winged gods. But this 1,000-winged god wasn't even enough for the sword spirit under Wang Ling's command to slash at it once. As for the girl in front of him, through the swastika, the monk saw tens of thousands of pairs of wings. In an instant, Tyrant had a rough idea of the girl's identity. He turned to the girl and smiled. I never thought that this poor monk would be able to meet your Majesty Kai on this trip. I'm really very lucky. The girl pursed her lips and wrinkled her pretty crescent eyebrows. You saw through me at one glance. You're no ordinary monk. When experts exchange blows, nothing could be more fatal than this. This was the monk and the world king of the god realm meeting for the first time, but they had already figured out each other's identities and intentions. It seems that your Majesty Kai already knows why this poor monk has come. The monk put his palms together in a Buddhist salute. A string of prayer beads hung between his thumb and index finger on his right hand, and each bead emitted powerful spirit power. Don't call me your Majesty Kai, it's so distant. How about I call you monk and you call me Awan? The girl with natural curls was unexpectedly approachable, and he was pleasantly surprised. Then this poor monk will respectfully accept your invitation, Miss Awan. The monk smiled. Awan nodded. It will take a lot of work to upgrade the earth. Also, many other factors have to be taken into account. Back then, after Tao Father Wang established the heavenly Tao, he established the divine realm. In fact, the current cultivation culture on Earth also originated from the divine realm. However, most of the cultivators on Earth are unaware of the existence of the god's domain. I know. The monk nodded. Therefore, once the Earth completes its upgrade, with the accumulation of time, the Earth will become a planet. The cultivation civilization on Earth will eventually merge with the divine domain. It would no longer be a subservient relationship. This matter will also implicate the interests of many large families in God's domain. Miss Awan is right. The monk completely agreed with the girl's opinion. However, regarding the matter of the merger, he also had his own opinions and views. Civilizations in the divine territory and Earth share the same origin. Even if there was a temporary difference, the merger would be completed sooner or later. In this penniless monk's opinion, this is the best opportunity. Regarding this matter, both the monk and the young girl were well aware of it. Once the seal on the unspeakable land's ancient gold men was lifted, it would be a huge blow to the entire cultivation civilization. At that time, it wouldn't just be Earth that would suffer. Even the divine realm would be implicated. Thus, the divine realm would have to get involved sooner or later. As for the interests of the large families in the divine realm, this was actually very easy to resolve. If you weren't convinced, then we could discuss it. The children of the large families in the divine realm were now studying at number 60 high school. Furthermore, with Gu Xuanji, the enforcer of heavenly Tao, on their side, the outcome could be decided through a vote. If they didn't want to discuss it and wanted to resolve it by force, the monk felt that it would be even easier. When the time came, they could directly hold a competition in the divine realm, and call it the first God's domain beating competition. Who could withstand 10 palms? This matter could be discussed again. At that moment, The girl with natural curls raised her eyebrows. Of course, if Ling Jinren decides to ask me for help, I won't refuse. But before that, I have a request. Does Miss Awan's request have to do with Star-Lord? The monk guessed. There are a lot of procedures involved in upgrading the Earth. I can't be the only one in charge of everything. I need someone to help me, the girl said. This poor monk understands. The monk nodded slightly when he heard this. Star-Lord of Divine Tao Star looked like a Star-Lord, but the entire Divine Tao Star was in fact an expansion of the Divine Realm. This was similar to the relationship between the Divine Realm and Earth. The so-called Star-Lord of Divine Tao Star was in fact more like a servant of the gods. The Divine Realm was imitating Tao Ancestor Wang's actions back then. They wanted to use this method of expanding the planet to make their own civilization flourish. Since that's the case, this poor monk will be so bold as to give it a try. The monk stared at the unconscious Star-Lord and smiled helplessly. I knew you would have a way, monk. The girl with natural curls clapped on the side. There was no other way. Open the light. The monk placed his hand on Star-Lord's heart. The light of the soul was also within the range of the spell. But monks usually didn't use it on people. That was because the effect of the light of the soul was too strong. And it was easy to have side effects. The advantages were obvious, but there were also disadvantages. The advantage was that it could make people suddenly see the light and discard distracting thoughts. The disadvantage was that it would enter Sage Mode for a short period of time. Earth Cultivators' Sage Mode usually went like this. Clear all their cloud disks, format the data on their hard drives, and delete all their seed files for some fat shut-ins. This kind of soul opening was a little too cruel. But let's be honest. After clearing the cloud disk's hard drive, it was true that the body could get better, comical. Chapter 1280. Regarding the after-effects of soul enlightenment, Tyrant had seen a lot from the cultivators on Earth. Divine Tao Star's Star-Lord belonged to the Divine Dragon clan. From an Earthling's perspective, this was an alien creature. Who knew what kind of problems would arise? Tyrant had always been worried about this situation. A few minutes later, this Star-Lord woke up after the spiritual illumination spell was completed. What's wrong with me? Star-Lord opened his eyes, revealing his Divine Dragon race's unique dark red vertical centipede. Compared with his previous dispirited and listless state, Star-Lord's complexion was clearly much better. The girl with curly hair clapped even harder. Wow. A monk. You're so powerful. I've shown him so many videos, but he's still not cured. You can just touch him with your hands. Miss Awan, you flatter me. It's just a small trick. The monk smiled bitterly and shook his head. However, I have to remind Miss Awan that since she has recovered, she shouldn't show her the video anymore. Everyone had a different level of acceptance. The monk was mainly worried that Divine Tao Star's Star-Lord would shut himself off again after watching the video. Nah. A monk. Can you touch me too? The young girl's eyes were like stars, and an envious expression appeared on her face. Miss Awan is healthy. My touch won't have any effect. The monk smiled awkwardly. Does that mean that as long as it's broken somewhere, it'll be fine? The girl asked. Yes. It doesn't matter if it's a person or an object. The monk answered truthfully. After all, the other party was a realm king of the divine world. Tyrant still maintained a certain degree of etiquette, not daring to cross the line in the slightest. Although he had the thought of taking the female monk as his disciple the first time he saw the girl, he was not able to do so. However, when he found out the origin of the girl with natural curls, he completely dispelled this thought. It was obvious that he wouldn't allow a God World King to be his disciple. Then one of my things is broken. Monk, can you cultivate it? At this time, the young girl, who wanted to see the monk's magical light illumination technique again, asked with hope. What is it? Jin Deng raised his eyebrows and asked. Shroud. The girl replied at lightning speed. Emo. Tyrant held his forehead. The horror in his heart was like a stormy sea. He never thought that the legendary realm king of the god world would be so open and bold for a moment. The monk's thoughts were in a mess. He didn't know how to answer the girl's question. Is this very difficult to fix? Miss Awan frowned when she saw the monk's troubled expression. The monk fell into silence. He originally wanted to be blunt. After all, when one reached a certain age, they would eventually be broken. However, he also felt that it would be too straightforward to say it out loud. As a monk, he should be more reserved. However, the next moment, the girl took out her phone. Look, my phone's membrane is cracked. Oh, so it's a cell phone membrane. The monk was suddenly enlightened and heaved a long sigh of relief. He then started to reflect on himself. As a proper monk who had achieved the Tao, why did he always think of some strange knowledge? He chanted Ba a dozen times in his heart. Then he reached out and caressed the girl's phone. The membrane was blessed and restored to its original state. Moreover, its hardness was several levels higher than before. It could even be used to block powerful attacks. Thank you, monk. Miss Awan thanked him, then patted Star-Lord on the back. And you. Hurry up and thank Master. Thank you, Master. Star-Lord was blank for a moment, then hurriedly thanked him. You shouldn't be afraid of Ling Jinren now, right? The monk asked to confirm that there were no side effects from the spiritual blessing spell. Judging from the results so far, everything seemed normal on the surface. But in the next moment, Star-Lord opened his dragon claws. Thank you, Master. I'm not afraid at all now. I even feel like I can slap Ling Jinren to death. Golden Lamp and Miss Awan. Monk, why is it like this? Miss Awan asked worriedly. She felt that this blessing had been a little too forceful. It's fine, the side effect is probably overconfidence. I hope Miss Awan can keep an eye on him. If he's slapped to death by Ling Jinren, this poor monk won't be able to save him even with the spiritual blessing spell. On the other side, Ajwa held the Buddha golden lotus in his hands as he gazed at the girl's soul sealed inside. He felt like he was holding a full-body 3D projection of a small person. When the monk had led Lotus Sun into the golden lotus, her soul had still been asleep. But now it was already showing signs of waking up. Seigneur Joie? After the girl's soul woke up, she had an astonished expression on her face, separated by the Buddha golden lotus. Wait. This line sounded a little familiar. Fortunately, Ajwa was already prepared. He took out his phone, opened the Q&A document that he had typed earlier, and then clicked on the artificial voice recognition playback function. Roughly 10 minutes later, all the questions had been answered, and the girl finally had a better understanding of her current situation. So, I can still be saved now. Lotus Sun smiled. Ajwa sighed inwardly at Lotus Sun's big heart. She was actually able to maintain such an optimistic attitude at a time like this. Thank you for telling me this, Seigneur Joie. I'll keep classmate Wang Ling's matter a secret, Lotus Sun promised. Actually. Ajwa was a little embarrassed. Actually, I shouldn't have told you this. Shifu has always kept a low profile. Junior sister Lotus Sun. You'll actually forget everything I'm telling you now once your soul returns to your body. After thinking it over, Ajwa decided to tell the girl this cruel truth. He didn't want to deceive her. I understand, Seigneur Joie. Lotus Sun nodded. But I'll try my best not to forget. Then do your best, junior sister Lotus Sun. Ajwa replied with a polite smile. In his opinion, it was almost impossible for her to retain her memories after returning to her body. Well, Seigneur Joie, can you do me a favor? The girl suddenly asked at that moment. Junior sister Lotus Sun, go ahead. Ajwa nodded. It's like this, Seigneur Joie. I've always wanted to see what the outside world thinks of me while I'm lying in bed, Lotus Sun said. She had always been the eldest daughter of Huagua Water Curtain Group, and everyone around her treated her with the utmost respect. Lotus Sun found this unreal. After the incident of the Yin and Yang death tribulation this time, for the girl, this might be a good plan to hear the truth from the bottom of her heart. Junior sister Lotus Sun, are you sure? Reality might be a lot crueler. There were many different opinions on this matter in the outside world. Ajwa felt that if he agreed to this request, it might hurt Lotus Sunday. I just want to hear the truth. Lotus Sun kept smiling gracefully. Also, didn't Seigneur Joie say that once I return to my body, I'll forget everything? So even if I hear some bad comments, it shouldn't matter, right? Audra was silent. After a while he said, "Go ahead, junior sister Lotus Sunday, whatever you want to do. I'll cooperate fully." Chapter 1281. Following Lotus Sun's instructions, Audra and Death Heavenly Dao started to prepare for the Great Sacrifice spell. He had specially used this spell on Daoist Guang before. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had used it to burn a lot of things. But now Daoist Guang was still addicted to being an online live streamer in his independent soul space. For a previous story, see Chapter 411. Eat more chicken, you can too. Over at the hospital, Death Heavenly Dao summoned a few Heavenly Dao little golden men to watch over the body. Together, he and Audra went to the luxurious villa where the girl lived. When Audra drove up to the entrance, he saw several maids sorting out the gifts piled on the ground. These gifts were beautifully wrapped. There were more than 100 of them, and they were stacked high like a small mountain. "Hello." Holding the golden lotus, Audra took the initiative to ask about the situation. The head maid put her broom aside and tried to keep a smile on her face. "Well, Miss is now in the hospital and is still being treated. Thank you for taking the time to send these gifts. Just put them on the ground, and we'll pass on your kindness. We don't receive guests at the moment." It was obvious that the head maid was also quite helpless about the current situation. In the last 2 days, they had received more than 100 gifts of various sizes. Everyone who came would ask a few questions, confirm the situation, put down the gifts, and then slip away. The head maid had already said this hundreds of times in the last 2 days, and could almost recite it backwards. Audra sighed inwardly at the head maid's professionalism. No matter how busy and tired she was, she wouldn't show her emotions directly on her face in front of outsiders. "This is Auntie Chiu, the head maid who has always taken good care of me," the girl in the Buddha Golden Lotus said at that moment. Death Heavenly Dao had already set up an independent mental chat channel, so Audra and Death Heavenly Dao could hear everything Lotus Sun said. Auntie Chiu had always been the head maid who put the big picture first. She was simple, honest, kind, and warm and polite. Hiding in the Golden Lotus, Lotus Sun watched everything. The head maid's performance didn't disappoint her. "You must be Auntie Chiu?" Audra smiled. "You are." Auntie Chiu was stunned. Not many people knew her name, unless they were members of the family. But Audra didn't look familiar to her, and didn't look like someone from the family. However, the more she looked at his face, the more familiar it seemed to Auntie Chiu. "I remember now, you're that hairy legs shoulder carrier on TV. Audra." Lotus Sun. It seems that the first time Auntie Chiu met Senior Zhua was at the Spirit Sword Exchange meet reported by a local TV station. And it seems that's the only thing she remembers. He felt very wronged. He had obviously shouldered so many earth-shattering scapegoats. In the end, there was only one person who remembered the humiliation he made on the day of the Spiritual Sword Exchange meet. "Hello, Auntie Chiu. I'm Audra." Right. I remember now." Auntie Chiu smiled brightly. "You're Miss Lotus Sun Senior, right? When I heard Miss talk about the school, the person she mentioned the second most was you. What about the first one?" "A classmate called Wang Ling Audra." "As expected of Shifu." Auntie Chiu. "I wonder why Mr. Zhua is here this time?" "It's like this. Old Man Sun has entrusted us with bringing some of Miss Lotus Sun's clothes and some daily necessities." Audra followed Lotus Sun's instructions and showed her his work ID. "This Mr. Wang next to me is a staff member." "Oh, so that's how it is." Auntie Chiu nodded. "Please follow me. I'll show you to Miss Sun's room." After saying that, the old auntie instructed the maids at the door. "You lot, tidy up the gifts at the door and send them to the warehouse. I'll come over later to take inventory." "Yes." The maids answered one after another. They then lowered their heads and busied themselves with the work at hand. As they passed by the huge garden fountain in the atrium, Audra couldn't help asking, "Who are the people at the door delivering gifts? Are they familiar with junior sister Lotus Sun?" "Not really." Auntie Chiu shook her head. "Yes, some of our group's business partners, and some are here to inquire about information." "Inquire about information?" Mrs. Serious illness will definitely have an impact on the stock. These capitalists are here to find out the truth. Auntie Chiu frowned and said, "We are one of the world's largest elixir companies, and have developed countless life-saving elixirs. If even young Master's life can't be saved, the impact will be huge. Of course, Master dotes on Miss very much. He doesn't care about the stock, but other people do." "Then what about these gifts? Put them in the warehouse first, and then find a chance to return them all later," Auntie Chiu said. She led Odd Joe forward. The Sun family's villa was astonishingly big. Odd Joe felt like he had walked for several minutes before he reached the entrance. When they arrived at the magnificent main hall, Auntie Chiu fetched the remote control and started to operate the elevator in the center. "This is a transmission array. We can save some time," Auntie Chiu said. Odd Joe sighed in his heart. In the end, this was the world of the rich. He didn't understand there was actually a transmission array in the house. It was only later that Odd Joe learned that such a transmission array could be found in every corner of the Sun family's villa. On the one hand, it was convenient for people to walk around, and on the other, it could effectively prevent visitors from randomly touring the villa and seeing things they shouldn't see. Lotus Sun's room was on the south side of the villa, and there was a very grand reception room in the middle. The transmission array wasn't direct and required a second transmission. When Odd Joe and the others were teleported to the living room, he heard a ruckus in it. "You're not allowed in the hospital. You people are usually so close to little sister Lotus Sun, but you don't know? Why don't I believe it?" A young man with a tall nose was sitting cross-legged on the sofa in the reception room. In front of him stood a row of 6 maids. The young man's attitude was arrogant, and he exuded the aura of a hedonistic young master. He was dressed quite decently, but Odd Joe had seen too many people, so he could tell from the way he talked what kind of person he was. But Odd Joe didn't poke his nose into other people's business. For someone to be able to enter the reception room at this critical juncture, it was obvious that they had to have something to do with Lotus Sunday. They had to be someone from the family. Seeing that the maids were lowering their heads and refusing to speak, the young man put on a pained expression. "I know that Auntie Chiu told you not to leak any information, and you're in a difficult position. But you should also know that I'm little sister Lotus Sun's cousin. Blood is thicker than water. Is there a problem with me knowing a little about my sister's current situation?" Saying this, the young man snapped his fingers, and a bodyguard in black next to him put a huge black suitcase on the coffee table. "I, Fan Xing, am not a stingy person. The money in the suitcase will be a bonus for anyone who answers my questions today. But if you don't want to talk, you'll have to bear the consequences." "Mr. Zhuo, Mr. Wang, I'm sorry for making you laugh. The juniors of this family don't know any better, so it's troublesome." In front of the reception room, Auntie Chiu turned to apologize to Odd Joe and the others. If it had been an outsider causing trouble, it would have been easy for her to deal with it. She could have directly taken action. But this Fan Xing was someone from the family. Auntie Chiu still had to treat him with courtesy. In order to get information on Lotus Sun, Fan Xing had already stayed here for 2 whole days. Now that she heard Fan Xing threaten her maid with her own ears, Auntie Chiu finally couldn't take it anymore. But she still maintained a very professional smile and walked forward with a kind expression on her face. "Young Master Fan, I remember saying it very clearly. Young Miss is safe and sound in the hospital. You don't have to worry about her. Is that so?" Fan Xing smiled. "But why do I hear that she's not going to make it?" Auntie Chiu was already taking deep breaths. "Young Master Fan, please don't listen to unconfirmed news." "What a pity." Fan Xing shrugged. "Before she fell ill, little sister Lotus Sun and I were engaged to each other. Now that she's sick, if she doesn't wake up, who am I going to talk to about it? I can give up, but I'll have to trouble old man Sun to come out and talk about compensation. I'm a boy who is easily hurt mentally and physically." Auntie Chiu suppressed her anger. "Young Master Fan, what good will it do you to ruin young Mrs.'s reputation?" Fan Xing chuckled. "Auntie Chiu, do you think you know little sister Lotus Sun very well? I have a lot of exclusive news about little sister Lotus Sun here." In the Golden Buddha Lotus, when the girl saw who it was, Her head also swelled. Lotus Sun. I knew he would come to cause trouble. In the spiritual space, she communicated with Audiobook and Death Heavenly Tao. Audiobook, doesn't junior sister Lotus Sun like this person? Lotus Sun. He used to be one of my pursuers. Audiobook was shocked. Isn't that your cousin? Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand, feeling a headache coming on. He said that he's already had his blood changed all over his body. He has excellent genes from head to toe, and doesn't have the slightest bit of orthopedic in him. What a disgusting person. Audiobook secretly snorted, then asked Death Heavenly Tao, Senior, can you take a look at this person's age? He'll be sent to the hospital very soon. At that moment, Death Heavenly Tao stared at the young man on the sofa. For some reason, Fan Xing suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Senior, what do you plan to do? Audiobook asked in the spiritual space. Have you seen a movie? What movie? Final Destination. Death Heavenly Tao snorted. Chapter 1282. A chill ran down his spine straight to his soul, giving Fan Xing goosebumps all over his body. But he still hadn't given up on the idea of gathering information. Although there were currently rumors that Lotus Sun was critically ill, this was a serious matter, and the young man couldn't just listen to one side of the story. That was why he had come to the villa where Lotus Sun lived to find out the truth. In his heart, he earnestly hoped that Lotus Sun was dead. As long as he could confirm her death, he could immediately have the company's stockbrokers accurately cash out in the stock market. If he acted now, it would actually be risky. The young man didn't have a lot of savings, and he wanted to do something big this time and invest all his money. Hence, he needed to act steadily. For the past 2 days, he had been staying overnight and causing trouble here, using all kinds of shameless methods to try to provoke the head maid and the other maids here so that he could get the truth out of them. However, everyone here was tight-lipped, and no matter what he asked, they wouldn't say half a word. This made Fan Xing feel a little uncomfortable. At that moment, Fan Xing turned his gaze to Audiobook, who was standing next to Auntie Chiao. He knew that Audiobook was Lotus Sun's senior, and the two of them had to be related. Furthermore, Audiobook was wearing a special Huaguo Water Curtain Group employee ID. This allowed Fan Xing to see new hope. Maybe Audiobook knew something. Obviously, the young man didn't realize that he was courting death. Isn't this Director Zhua? Fan Xing said with a slightly contemptuous expression. I wonder what an outsider like Director Zhua is doing at my little sister Lotus Sun's place? My sister and I have already pledged to marry each other. Isn't it a little late for you to come fawn over her? The corners of Audiobook's mouth twitched violently. It wasn't just Auntie Chiao, even he couldn't help himself. But Senior Death Heavenly Tao had already taken action. So he just needed to be patient and watch the show. Fan Xing felt a little uncomfortable under the gaze of this young man in overalls. He didn't know why, but when he looked at this young man he felt a bone-piercing chill. Thus, Fan Xing frowned again and said, In any case, Director Zhua is my junior sister Lotus Sun's senior. Where did this guru come from? Death Heavenly Tao. Fan Xing, what are you looking at? So what if you have big eyes? What was the point of glaring at him? If you have the ability, stare me to death. An outsider like you has no right to cause trouble in my younger sister's house. As soon as he finished speaking, Fan Xing felt his body getting colder and colder for some reason. He snorted and stood up from the sofa. He glanced at the maids and said, I seem to have caught a cold. I'm going back to my room. Hurry up and make me a bowl of ginger soup and a typhoid recovery pill. Otherwise, don't even think about getting tips. After that, the young man left arrogantly with a few bodyguards dressed in black who accompanied him. Senior, you're not going to make a move? Audiobook couldn't take it anymore. Death Heavenly Tao's voice was cold. The countdown has already started. In less than 24 hours, he'll definitely be sent to the hospital. Previously, Death Heavenly Tao had indeed had the urge to glare at Fan Xing to death. His eyes were the Heavenly Tao's stare of death's demon eye. As long as he used his soul force and stared at a person for more than 10 seconds, that person would immediately die. But due to Fan Xing continuing to provoke unceasingly, This made Death Heavenly Dao change its mind. It would be too easy for him to just glare him to death. Half dead was the greatest torture. In the spiritual space, Lotus Sun asked curiously, "Senior, what will happen to my cousin?" Death Heavenly Dao, "Don't worry, Miss Sunday. He won't die, but his life is over." Lotus Sun sighed. "I didn't expect him to be so vicious." After Fan Xing left, Auntie Chiu naturally apologized. Fan Xing hadn't left for the past 2 days, which was giving her quite a headache. "Auntie Chiu, I've made a fool of myself. It's my fault, I shouldn't have let him in." "It's all right, Auntie Chiu. This kind of person will naturally get what he deserves," Ajwa said with a smile. Elsewhere, Fan Xing, who had returned to his room, felt uneasy all over. For some reason, it was getting colder and colder. Lying on the bed in the guest room, his body went limp and he felt like he had lost all his strength. "Oh no, young master seems to have a fever. Get the private doctor in the villa to come and take a look." "That won't do. I already asked around. This private doctor has also been transferred to the hospital for a meeting." The bodyguards who had come along were discussing this. "Cut the crap. If you have the time, hurry up and tell those maids to hurry up," Fan Xing shouted in a low voice. Hearing this, the bodyguards left the room one after another. At that moment, Fan Xing was the only one left in the room. Murderous intent quietly descended. His head rested on the pillow. For some reason, Fan Xing felt that the pillow seemed especially soft today. He closed his eyes and rested for a while. But it wasn't long before the young man started to feel stuffy and hot. He could feel his breathing becoming labored. In a split second, like a salted fish struggling on its deathbed, Fan Xing abruptly jumped up from the bed. What's going on?" Then he was astonished to find that, at some point, there was a big hole in the pillow. The cotton wadding that had spilled out had all flowed into his nostrils and mouth. Ba. Ugh. He did his best to dig out the foreign matter from his mouth and nose. Kneeling on the ground, Fan Xing stared at the cotton wadding that was soaked with his saliva and snot as he dug it out of his mouth and nose. The strange scene in front of him terrified him. He realized that he couldn't stay in the room alone any longer. Someone come quickly," he yelled. However, there wasn't the slightest movement outside the guest room. The bodyguards were all chased away by him. They went to urge the maids to prepare the medicinal soup. Not a single person stayed behind to watch over him. "Damn it!" Fan Xing gritted his teeth, pounced on the door, and angrily turned the handle on the door. Then, there was a cracking sound. The entire handle was twisted off by him. Fan Xing. However, before the young man could react to how he could twist off the door handle of the bedroom so easily, at this moment, one of the screws on the door suddenly fell and rolled to the young man's feet. Fan Xing was in a daze and didn't notice the situation under his feet at all. He stepped on the screw with his bare feet. A sharp pain came instantly. It penetrated his whole body. In the midst of a scream, the young man lost his balance. As he stumbled, he saw that he was about to hit the edge of the bed. Fan Xing used the last of his strength to instill psionic power into the top of his head. He strengthened the hardness of his head. The next moment, his iron head hit the edge of the bed. The huge impact caused the entire bed to be lifted up. It completed a perfect 360-degree Thomas full rotation in the air, and then fell heavily on the lower half of his body. "Young master, the medicine is here." The bodyguard had already rushed back with the medicine in his hand. Hearing the movement inside the door, he hurriedly kicked the door open and entered. "Young master, what's wrong with you?" The bedroom door was kicked away like a spinning guillotine and directly hit Fan Xing's head. In an instant, the bedroom was filled with blood. Chapter 1283. Half an hour later, the ambulance arrived at the Sun family's villa. When the emergency doctor arrived, Fan Xing was still pinned under the bed. "Why didn't you pull your young master out? What if he strained himself?" The bodyguards looked at each other. They didn't dare move for no other reason than they were afraid of causing a second injury to their young master. Pulling him out would at most cause another fracture. In this situation, the bedside is directly pressing against his spine. The emergency doctor didn't dare continue. Judging from his personal experience, even if Fan Xing was eventually rescued, he would probably be left paralyzed. But considering Fan Xing's relationship with Huagua Water Curtain Group, if Huagua Water Curtain Group was willing to provide some high-quality pills for body recovery, he would be able to walk, but he wasn't sure about anything else. With current cultivation medical technology, physical damage and bone fractures weren't a big deal for cultivators. What they were most afraid of was nerve damage. Even if Fan Xing could be rescued and regain his ability to walk, he would still be a cripple. He might even have problems with his balance. Not to mention flying on a sword, even running would be a problem. After a simple appraisal and bandaging, the emergency doctor directed the people at the scene to dig out Fan Xing, who had been pinned under the bed for a long time, and carried him onto a stretcher. "Doctor, what happened to my young master? I wanted to ask you what happened. Why did the room look like a car accident even though he was asleep?" The bodyguard looked aggrieved. "It seems like the doorknob was spinning, and a nail fell. Young master didn't pay attention and stepped on the nail. He lost his balance due to the pain and crashed into the bed, causing the entire bed to flip." "What about the door?" the doctor questioned. "I accidentally stabbed him when I kicked the door open to save him," the bodyguard said. The emergency doctor sighed, then made a preliminary appraisal of Fan Xing's injuries. Comminuted skull fracture, brain juice and blood seeping out of the crack. The soles of his feet were pierced by a mystic iron nail. He might have tetanus. Pressure on his spine, causing intermittent shock. He fell to the floor, which is made of top-grade mystic stone and is extremely hard, causing your young master's knees to shatter. At the same time, a rib pierced through his chest after the fracture and inexplicably stabbed into his lower body pouch. What pouch? He's a man after all. What other pouch could he have? When the emergency doctor said this, he couldn't help but feel sad. A single rib could skewer the things in the bag like a mutton kebab. He had never seen such a magical operation. Of course, this was not the end. The strangest thing is that there is cotton wool in his oral cavity. I just took a brief look with the scanning magical equipment. Some of the cotton wool is blocked in his lungs and stomach. He needs to be operated on as soon as possible. Then can my young master still be saved? The bodyguards were shocked and turned pale. Now that Fan Xing was in such a big trouble, they might not be able to keep their jobs. This is also the strangest thing to me. The emergency doctor glanced at Fan Xing on the stretcher. None of these injuries could be considered fatal, but when stacked together, it was enough to take a person's life. But the strangest thing was that Fan Xing was still breathing. He was still stubbornly living on. Earlier, when the ambulance arrived at the Sun family's villa, the emergency doctor already had a bad feeling in his heart. Because of the long distance, it took them a lot of time to get here. According to the bodyguard's description, Fan Xing's injuries seemed to be very serious, and there was probably no hope of treatment. Who knew that Fan Xing would actually still be breathing despite such serious injuries? It seems that everything is the will of the heavens. At that moment, the emergency doctor stared at Fan Xing and sighed in his heart. He felt that Fan Xing was really lucky. If it wasn't for the blessings of the heavens, how could this person still be alive? Fan Xing had died very peacefully. He had been sent out of the Sun family's villa on a stretcher. The bodyguards who had been accompanying him followed him in tears, as if they were at a funeral. Watching this scene from a distance in Lotus Sun's room, Audiobook felt that Fan Xing really was dead. Senior Death Heavenly Dao, is he really still alive? Audiobook looked incredulous. Actually, compared with killing a person, I'm actually better at suppressing the bloodline. It's to keep people in a half-dead state. Death Heavenly Dao said. There used to be an old saying, the wicked will be dealt with by the heavens. That's actually true. For these wicked people, I often come up with ways to suppress their bloodline so that they die a painful death, and they usually choose to commit suicide in the end. Lotus Sun and Audiobook. Audiobook. Junior sister Lotus Sun, what do we do next? Lotus Sun. It's very simple. I'll have to trouble Senior Shua to tidy up the things in my room, then find a secluded place to burn them for me. Ajwa. Burn them all. Lotus Sun thought carefully. Yes. There are two things that can't be burned. What is it? Keep my wardrobe and desk for now. It wasn't that the girl couldn't bear to part with them, but that there were some of her private clothes in the wardrobe. If she took them out in broad daylight and burned them, it seemed a little inappropriate. As for the desk, leaving the textbooks inside was secondary. It was just that the girl remembered the copybook that she had secretly hidden earlier. Wang Ling's handwriting was very beautiful. She had always been secretly imitating it. Ajwa was Wang Ling's disciple. If Senior Zhua saw him imitating Wang Ling's copybook, how embarrassing would that be? What about the other things? Burn them all, we'll buy them again. All right. Ajwa smiled bitterly. In the end, this was the thinking of the rich. He used the great sacrificial art in tandem with the heavenly Tao of death. Except for the two things that Lotus Sun had specified that he hadn't burned. He burned almost everything in the girl's room. This was equivalent to moving Lotus Sun's room into the space inside the Buddha Golden Lotus. Should I burn the Wi-Fi? Ajwa asked. There's no need, Senior Zhua. We can get an internet signal here, Lotus Sun replied. Ajwa was blank at first, but on second thought it wasn't that strange. This Buddha Golden Lotus was something that Tyrant kept for his own protection. Perhaps the monk had also thought about surfing the internet in the soul space. In this day and age, everything was fine. Even if you lost your life, you couldn't be disconnected from the internet. Therefore, this Buddha space also came with its own private Wi-Fi that Golden Lamp had personally set up. As long as one was in the space of the Buddha Golden Lotus, they would be able to connect automatically. After recovering her internet access, she logged into her account. Because she was the president of the student union, she was the leader of number 60 High's campus group chat. Not to mention the class chat group. Even the campus chat group had a heated discussion about her. But Lotus Sun wasn't in a hurry to tell everyone that she was safe. Instead, like Wang Ling, he learned to peek. Chapter 1284. Everything was as the girl had expected. The number of discussions about her was high, and almost every group was talking about her. When a topic aroused the participation and discussion of the people, all kinds of rumors and slanders would naturally follow. But this was all within Lotus Sun's expectations. This was exactly the effect she wanted. She wanted to see the people who were usually polite to her. What kind of attitude would they have after learning that she was about to die? After a lot of summarization, Lotus Sun had roughly divided the comments online into the following categories. 1. Deep sympathy. This was a group of compassionate and kind people, which was especially precious in the context of the environment. Wasn't the president fine during the competition a few days ago? How did she suddenly? Who knows which hospital she's in? I'm going to see her. I didn't expect something like this to happen to student Lotus Sunday. I'm praying for her. I hope she can overcome her illness soon and tide over this difficult time. I heard that many experts have already come for a consultation. They will definitely be able to save student Lotus Sun. Pray. 2. Eccentric people. These people were different from the official Yin-Yang masters, and belonged to the category of online Yin-Yang masters. To put it simply, these people seemed to be saying nice things, but there was a hint of mockery in their words, which made people unhappy. And those with high status were also known as big Yin-Yang. Sure. Elementary Yin-Yang master. Isn't Huagua Water Curtain Group the world's most powerful pill-making company? Intermediate Yin-Yang master. Sigh, if student Sun can't be cured even with so much money, how are we foundation establishment scums going to survive? Advanced Yin-Yang master. I heard that the experts attending this consultation are all eminent people. Funny, Grand Yin-Yang master. I'm not trying to start a war. I just want to ask, where did this person come from? To be able to gather so many famous experts and have such good medical resources? Envious. Too happy. 3. Gossipers who follow the rumors. One of the biggest characteristics of these people was that they could selectively ignore official news, and would never get tired of the gossip circulating on the internet. The biggest difference between following the crowd and ordinary bystanders was that those who followed the crowd would not examine the truth of the matter, and would only believe in what they believed. I just saw a message shared by Student Lotus Sun's best friend in another group. She said that Student Lotus Sun's illness was most likely contracted on 9 Dragon Mountain. I didn't expect her to do that kind of thing with a few boys during the competition. Are you serious? Student Sun, haven't you always had high standards? You may know a person's face, but you can't judge his heart. I didn't know that Student Sun was such a person. Flies don't bite seamless eggs. I feel that there might be a problem with Student Sun's style. When she was still alive, no one dared to talk about these things in real life or in online chat groups. This was a novel experience. Lotus Sun looked at these chat records and didn't feel very angry, because these were all false things to begin with. On the contrary, she seemed rather excited, because for the first time, she felt the joy of peeping. When Lotus Sun shared a screenshot of this group chat with Audiobook, he smiled coldly. Junior Lotus Sun, don't mind it. There will always be people who spread some false information. I don't mind it, I just think it's a little funny. Lotus Sun couldn't help laughing. Junior Lotus Sun is so generous, Audiobook exclaimed. I've long anticipated this situation. Usually, some people are too embarrassed to say it, but now that they know I can't save her, they're letting go. Saying this, the girl forwarded another picture to Audiobook. Look, Senior Joie, there's even a photoshopped picture. And this was the 4th type of people that Lotus Sun had summed up. Photoshopped out of nothing. Look. I have screenshots of Student Lotus Sun chatting with other people here. And someone even found Student Lotus Sun's external social media account. It turns out that Student Lotus Sun has always liked girls. No way? Eating melon. There are screenshots. It's absolutely true. And there are a lot of pictures of girls on Student Sun's external social media account. It's suspected to be her ex-girlfriend. My God, I feel like I've eaten a big melon. No wonder Student Lotus Sun rejected my confession before. It's not that she doesn't like me, it's that she doesn't like boys. Junior Lotus Sun, do you know who did it? Audiobook asked. Actually, if one looked closely at these photoshopped pictures, it would be obvious that they were fake. That was because the background color of the fonts and the background color were completely different. The pictures were slightly blurry, and there was a watermark in the lower right corner of the picture. But it was clear that those who had the intention of spreading the word didn't care about these things. They only cared about how big of a melon they had eaten. I have a rough idea. Lotus Sun nodded. Who else could it be? It was none other than the members of the Warriors Club, which was a group of boys whom she had once rejected and turned from fans to haters. Previously, see Chapter 1088. The Rome Protection Club and the Warriors Club. Do you want me to look for them? Get them to clarify it? Audiobook asked with concern. There were actually 2 main reasons for people who had the intention of photoshopping pictures to spread rumors and fabricate stories. One was that there was too little homework, and the other was that they didn't feel responsible for posting things online. Since this concerned the girl's reputation, Audiobook wanted to directly intervene and help Lotus Sun clarify it. In the end, Lotus Sun was more patient than he had imagined. No need, Senior Joie. In any case, it's all fake, Lotus Sun said politely. You really don't need to do anything about it. The main thing is that there's no point in doing anything about it now, Senior Joie. The number of people spreading it isn't high enough to file a case. So you want to? Let's see if it ferments later. If it's enough to file a case, we'll directly go after the source, Lotus Sun said calmly. Why does it feel like Junior Lotus Sun has already seen a lot of similar things? Audiobook couldn't help asking. Previously, a competitor company spread rumors and smeared Huagua Water Curtain Group's name. And my grandfather had people deal with it the same way. Bear with it for now and write it down. We'll settle the score after we're sentenced. Audiobook was stunned. As the saying went, it was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. In the end, this was the thinking of a successor to a financial group. Lotus Sun scrolled through all kinds of comments online, and was overjoyed. Senior Joie, this is the first time I've realized that peeping is so interesting. That's right. Audiobook nodded. Even though he was sure that his Shifu Wangling was definitely peeping right now, Senior Joie. At that moment the girl, who had been immersed in the joy of peeping, suddenly had a whim. Odd joie? Lotus Sun. What do you think would happen if I sent a string of ellipses in the group? Odd joie. That was impossible. It would scare these people to death. Chapter 1285. After proposing to send an ellipsis, Lu Gan the girl stared at the screen in front of her and fell into deep thought. Ajwa was actually looking forward to the explosive effect of the girl's ellipses. In the large group chat, whether it was the rumormongers, photoshopped photos, or the bystanders, when they saw the parties involved online, they would definitely have to consider the issue of legal liability. At that time, it would definitely cause a large number of news retractions. It was rare to see such a collective withdrawal of information, but it was clear that Lotus Sun was considering even more problems. The girl hesitated for a moment, but in the end she did not send out the ellipsis. Junior sister Lotus Sun, aren't you going to be naughty? Ajwa asked with a smile. If I send an ellipsis, classmate Wang Ling will definitely know that I already know that he's an almighty. Lotus Sun was very hesitant. Realization dawned on him. Only then did he realize that the young girl was worried about this matter. Master, that is indeed what I said. He has always kept a low profile. Ajwa nodded. Then I'd better not, otherwise classmate Wang Ling will definitely be troubled. In the end, she resolutely closed the group chat and didn't press the send button. Ajwa sighed with emotion at how sensible Lotus Sun was. No wonder his master was willing to spend so much effort to save him. Who else knows that I was moved into the Buddha's golden lotus? Lotus Sun asked. So far apart from me, Master, Reverend Golden Lamp, and Senior Death Heavenly Tao, nobody knows. Even Grandpa doesn't know? Yes. Fortunately, I didn't tell Grandpa that I was safe just now. Otherwise, would he think it was a ghost? Lotus Sun couldn't help laughing. The preparations are almost done, Death Heavenly Will said. He had been sensing the movements of the Heavenly Court. With the cooperation of Grandmaster Jin Deng and the Realm King of the Immortal Realm, a grand tribulation ceremony was about to begin. Divine Tao Star would use divine crystals to recharge all the underground spirit veins on Earth. As a result, the spiritual chi on Earth became richer and more abundant. Complete the upgrade of Earth. From there, they would be able to further liberate the restrictions on Earth. So fast. Ajwa was a little surprised. Grandmaster Jin Deng's speed was unexpected. But there's one last step left. Death Heavenly Tao said. This last step was actually very simple. He needed to convince the major families in God's domain to agree to upgrading Earth. After all, this matter involved the interests of the God domain's upper-class families. Death Heavenly Tao felt that this matter would not be so simple, and a huge battle would be unavoidable. Do you want to take a look? Bring your junior sister along, Death Heavenly Tao asked. Did my Shifu go? Ajwa asked worriedly. There's no need for Ling Junren to personally deal with those pieces of trash from the domain of the gods. Grandmaster Jin Deng is more than enough to handle it, Death Heavenly Law said. It was precisely because he knew that Wang Ling wouldn't be going in person that he planned to have Ajwa take Lotus Sun with him to see the big scene. Lower-class cultivators spectating a duel between high-level cultivators, apart from broadening their horizons, would also be of great help to their comprehension of Tao. This could be considered Death Heavenly Tao giving Lotus Sun and Ajwa special treatment. On Earth, a Foundation establishment stage cultivator would usually not be able to see a battle between perfected immortals, let alone a battle between perfected immortals. Can I go too? Lotus Sun was a little surprised. You can go, but how much you can remember is up to you. Don't forget that once you return to your body, your memories will disappear. Death Heavenly Tao reminded her kindly. He was actually also frantically giving the girl hints. Memories would disappear. But a good memory wasn't as good as a lousy pen. Don't you have a little notebook? Wouldn't it be over if he just wrote down everything he wanted to remember? However, Death Heavenly Tao couldn't just say it out loud. In the end, it all depended on the girl's comprehension. Then Senior, how do we get there? Ajwa asked. Put your hand on my shoulder, and I'll teleport directly. Then Deaf Heavenly Tao formed a seal with his hand. A golden light blossomed from under his feet, and then reached the horizon. This transmission channel was exclusive to Heavenly Tao, and was a green passageway leading to the domain of the gods. When the channel opened, non-designated personnel wouldn't be able to sense it. Before the official transmission, Deaf Heavenly Tao glanced at Lotus Sun in the Buddha's golden lotus. It was very obvious. The girl had already received his hint. She had opened the cloud disk notepad on her computer in advance, intending to record the information manually. This girl was pretty smart. Before the transmission was activated, Deaf Heavenly Tao couldn't help but smile coldly in his heart. Elsewhere, in the conference hall of the Profound Path Great Hall in the domain of the gods, the top 10 clans in terms of overall combat strength had sent representatives to discuss Earth's upgrade. The Profound Path Great Hall was an iconic building of the domain of the gods, similar to a parliamentary conference hall. At that moment, the clan elders of several large clans had gathered in the conference hall. Although it was called a discussion, it was actually a war of words. What? Upgrade Earth? I don't agree. I definitely don't agree. Back then, Tao ancestors spread cultivation culture to Earth only for the continuation of civilization. And the domain of the gods is the true cultivation tradition. At that moment, an old man with a twisted beard slapped the table and shouted excitedly. The domain of the gods is a peaceful and supreme place for cultivators. It can't be tarnished. This agitated old man was Zhou Zhentian, the clan elder of the Zhou family, who ranked fourth on the ranking of clans in the domain of the gods. The monk had long since anticipated this scene. But looking at the old man in front of him who was spitting saliva everywhere, he couldn't help sighing in his heart. He sighed from the bottom of his heart at the quality of cultivators in the domain of the gods. After all, this touched on the issue of interests. Agitation was understandable. But what kind of place was the domain of the gods? This was the birthplace of cultivation that Tao ancestor Wang had founded back then. In this birthplace, a clan elder who claimed to be an upper-level almighty was loudly berating like a shrew cursing in the street. In the monk's view, this was really a disgrace to cultivators. This kind of bearing really couldn't compare to 1/10,000th of Lingzhenren's. Furthermore, it had clearly deviated from Tao ancestor Wang's original intention back then. Sailing against the current, one would either advance or fall back. In the monk's view, these words were very appropriate to describe the current situation in the domain of the gods. Hey, monk. See, I told you they wouldn't agree. Holding her head in her hands, Miss Awan sat next to the golden lamp and anxiously watched the war of words in front of her. The monk fiddled with the prayer beads in his hand, his heart unperturbed. After the clan elders in the domain of the gods had finished cursing and expressing their opinions, the monk stood up and bowed to everyone. This humble monk feels that benefactors have misunderstood. Although Earth has been upgraded, there won't be many cultivators on Earth who have made the transition to the domain of the gods. According to the rules set by Tao ancestor Wang back then, only those who have touched the venerated immortal realm are qualified to come to the domain of the gods for further exchanges. Even if Earth completes its upgrade, the number of people who can touch the venerated immortal realm can be counted on one hand. However, the monk's words didn't sway the clan elders. Even so, that won't do. There aren't many now, but what if there are more in the future? Grand Elder Zhou Zhentian of the Zhou family flicked his sleeves and narrowed his eyes at the monk in front of him. There's still a monk. What kind of Buddha are you? What right do you have to represent Earth? If it weren't for the face of the world king of the god world, would you even have the right to speak here? Benefactor, this humble monk thinks you've misunderstood. The monk put his palms together and said sincerely, this humble monk isn't here to speak or ask for anything. Zhou Zhentian snorted. If it's not to speak, then what is it? This is a request. The monk said resolutely, if anyone doesn't agree, this humble monk will have no choice but to take action. Zhou Zhentian instantly laughed. What, you want to kill someone, monk? This humble monk is a monk, I don't kill. At this moment, the monk looked up and opened his mouth. He looked at the clan elder with the twisted beard and smiled. This is called transcendence. Chapter 1286. Everything was as the monk had expected. The cultivators of the domain of the gods had always lived like princes and held high positions. Now, they had instead become a little unmotivated. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before they were bound to become frogs at the bottom of a well, digging their own graves. The easiest way to deal with this group of people was to make them recognize reality. When the monk's swastika opened, the huge meeting hall of Dao Profound Hall was immediately enveloped in a Buddhist light. This wasn't an ordinary Buddhist light. When it fell on the elders present, they could clearly feel the pressure on their shoulders. Some even bent their knees, and nearly couldn't withstand the Buddhist light summoned by the swastika, and fell to their knees. This monk from Earth was more powerful than anyone else in the domain of the gods, and many of the elders and new disciples were afraid. In the spiritual space, several of the elders present communicated telepathically with each other. This didn't make sense. They clearly remembered that the strongest person on Earth was currently only a venerated immortal. Apart from that, there was only one true venerated immortal cultivator. Furthermore, there was only one venerated immortal or true venerated immortal. Furthermore, that true venerated immortal had accidentally advanced by eating broccoli. The domain of the gods had been monitoring the situation on Earth, so they didn't think much of it at all. After all, there was indeed a certain probability that those above true immortal could enter this hidden realm. As for Immortal Zhenyuan, they weren't unfamiliar with this name. He belonged to a group of relatively primitive Earth cultivators, so they weren't too surprised that he had advanced to venerated immortal. So the question now was, where on Earth had this monk come from? Is there no one else in the domain of the gods? This poor monk hasn't used his full strength. At that moment, the monk faced the elders of the domain of the gods with a benevolent smile. Indeed, he hadn't used his full strength. The Buddhist light summoned by the swastika wasn't even 10% of its original strength. Who would have thought that some of the elders in front of him would actually be unable to withstand the pressure and would fall to their knees? This made the monk feel very disappointed. He couldn't help wanting to yawn in this kind of boring battle with such a huge disparity in battle strength. But as an eminent monk, Jin Deng still worked hard to maintain the qualities of a superior cultivator. Ever since he fought with Wang Ling, Tyrant felt that it was boring to fight with anyone. Every battle, no matter how big or small, was a process of accumulating experience. However, if a level 99 player were to fight against a bunch of level 5 trash, even if the experience gained was minimal, he would rather consume several hundred lifetimes of cultivation and let Wang Ling slap him a few more times. The monk never regretted his duel with Wang Ling. It could be said that Wang Ling had given him a wake-up call, letting him know that his realm wasn't the strongest, and that there was still room for improvement. In fact, what the monk was doing now was what Wang Ling had done to him back then. He wanted to wake up this group of self-absorbed self-cultivators from the domain of the gods. Monk, your realm is so strong, you could have come to the divine domain long ago. Why are you hiding in a place like Earth where there are scum cultivators everywhere? The Zhou clan's grand elder, Zhou Zhentian, was also shocked by the aura emitted by the monk. In particular, he recognized the swastika on the monk's left eye. This was a power that only the most holy Buddhist could possess. I travel the world. What does it have to do with you where I want to stay? The monk was speechless. He was extremely disappointed with the self-cultivators of the domain of the gods. In the spiritual space, the Zhou clan's grand elder Zhou Zhentian was frantically communicating with the other clan elders. I was wondering why the Wang family, the Gu family and the Lu family didn't send anyone over. It turns out that there's something fishy going on here. The juniors of these families all ran to Earth earlier. Now that I think about it, I'm afraid there really is something going on here. Who on earth is this monk? I'm not sure, but he's very strong. There are many people who cultivate Buddhism, but those who can derive the swastika can be counted on one hand. Even in the domain of the gods, I can only think of a few people who can do it. As he talked with the other clan elders, Zhou Zhentian's thoughts turned rapidly. He recalled the Dharma names of several eminent monks who had attained the Tao. Iron Spirit, Tong Hui Inxian. The monk heard Zhou Zhentian's muttering. Oh, I didn't expect Clan Elder Zhou to have heard of these Dharma names. Hearing Zhou Zhentian say these names with his own ears, Jin Deng was a little surprised. That's right, monk. It's no big deal that you have the swastika. The 3 most holy Buddhists in our domain of the gods also have it. Zhou Zhentian sneered. What was so great about having only one most holy Buddhist on earth? Their domain of the gods had 3. However, hearing Zhou Zhentian's laughter, the monk couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Zhou Zhentian and sighed. This humble monk doesn't dare to lie to Clan Elder Zhou. To tell you the truth, the 3 Dharma names that Clan Elder Zhou mentioned are actually this humble monk's. How is this possible? Zhou Zhentian was shocked. The swastika name requires the power of reincarnation to cultivate. Iron Spirit was this humble monk's Dharma name during his 1,000 reincarnations. Tong Hui was from 1001 to 1999. Inxian was from 2000th to 2999th. As for Jin Deng, that's this humble monk's Dharma name now. As the monk explained, he bowed to Zhou Zhentian. So the 3 Dharma names that Clan Elder Zhou mentioned, the 3 eminent monks, are actually all me. Moreover, didn't Clan Elder Zhou notice that these Dharma names are named after gold, silver, copper, and iron? They also have the meaning of reincarnation. This humble monk knows that Clan Elder Zhou and the other clan elders present have many questions in their hearts now. The monk sighed. However, this is the truth. Monk, don't go too far. Don't think that we won't beat you up just because you have the support of the realm king of the godly realm. At this moment, Zhou Zhentian shouted. The 7 clan elders present couldn't bear the monk's arrogance anymore. Take down this arrogant monk. In the next moment, the 7 clan elders in the meeting hall released their auras. With Zhou Zhentian in the lead, they all took out their Dharma artifacts, swords, knives, axes, and hammers. The scene of 7 Tao masters attacking together could be described as spectacular. The monk sighed in his heart. They were cultivators from the godly realm after all. They used world-defying Dharma artifacts, and they were of the highest grade. This was one of a kind. However, they were too naive to think that they could deal with him with such petty tricks. Put down the butcher's knife. The monk's face was as calm as an ancient well. He put his palms together. Buzz. In the sky, countless golden tentacles appeared out of thin air in the descending Buddhist light. These were the Buddhist tentacles of nothingness. They were summoned by the monk and had the divine power to disarm when he said, "Put down the butcher's knife." In fact, the clan elders had no experience in fighting with a Buddhist saint. They had just taken out their Dharma artifacts and were ready to attack. The Dharma artifacts in their hands were all swept away by these Buddhist tentacles. These Buddhist tentacles were incredibly fast. In the blink of an eye, they appeared around them and took away their Dharma artifacts. Then, they quickly dissipated and escaped into the Buddhist light with their Dharma artifacts. By the time they reacted, they were nowhere to be seen. F***ck. Instead of disarming, it was more like an open robbery. Zhou Zhentian was so angry that his whole body trembled. The 7 Tao masters were humiliated by a monk. Where would their dignity go? Everyone, this monk is strange. We can't fight separately. We have to gather our firepower. After Zhou Zhentian finished speaking, the other clan elders understood. They put their hands on the shoulders of the person in front of them and lined up in a row. They transferred their spiritual power through their bodies and finally gathered all their power on Zhou Zhentian, who was at the front of the line. This scene caused Awan, who was standing at the side, to laugh hysterically. Monk. Are you playing an eagle-catching chicken game? The Golden Lamp and Zhou Zhentian were speechless. P.S. Reorganizing the realms. Foundation establishment, golden core, nascent soul, soul formation, itinerant immortal, true venerable, venerable immortal, immortal sage, Tao venerable, Tao god, Tao ancestor. There may be more after Tao ancestor. I'll add more later. Wang Ling. Chapter 1287. He could only say that Misawan was indeed Misawan. As a realm king of the divine realm who was still growing, she could see through the truth at a glance. This made the monk deeply admire her. This eagle of his was indeed an eagle, but it wasn't the new and long eagle. The 7 great Tao masters led by Zhou Zhentian were indeed as weak as chicks in the monk's eyes. The scariest thing for cultivators was not knowing their own strength. The monk had already made this mistake once, so he naturally would not make it a second time. He was a sensible person. He knew how to reflect. He reflected on himself 3 times a day. This was the monk. However, not everyone had self-awareness and would reflect on themselves. Monk, eat my cannon. The 7 great Tao masters lined up in a vertical line and poured all their psionic energy into Zhou Zhentian. They were condensing their magic power. The 6 of them put their hands on the shoulders of the person in front of them and leaned forward slightly, aiming at the monk. The monk instantly understood. These 7 people used the form of a train to turn into a very long cannon barrel. Rumble. The next moment, Zhou Zhentian, the leader of the Zhou family, opened his mouth wide, and countless dense psionic cannonballs exploded from his mouth. The monk was astonished by this novel move. He was not surprised because of how powerful this move was. Instead, he felt that these Tao masters from the divine realm were not people with normal brain circuits. How could they come up with such a strange move? But to be honest, it was still very lethal. The 7 great Tao masters gathered their psionic energy into one point, not only sharing the pressure of the consumption of psionic energy, but also making their power more concentrated. Elder Zhou Zhentian, who was the leader, turned into a giant abyss in the League of Legends. While leading the people behind him, he constantly began to spit at the monk. The psionic cannonballs were first released from Elder Zhou Zhentian's mouth, and then they instantly grew in size to the size of cannonballs. As the cannonballs passed, the space was torn apart, and countless cracks appeared. They bombarded the walls of the meeting hall, blasting out huge holes. Jin Deng. The power was there, but the scene was so beautiful that the monk did not dare to look at it. Beside him, Miss Awan was completely dumbfounded from laughing. She held her stomach and rolled on the ground, laughing like a barbell. The monk did not expect the Tao masters from the divine realm to degenerate to such an extent. All they could think of was some fancy but useless move. What a bunch of fancy things. Tyrant easily dodged the bombardment while advancing forward. His body was surrounded by the Buddha's protective halo. His entire body lit up, making the crimson red moon Kasaya shine even more brilliantly. From the moment the Buddha's light appeared, dodging was no longer important. Tyrant took the cannons head-on. When the cannons hit his body, they were immediately dispersed by the body-protecting Buddha light and disappeared like a clay ox entering the sea. Monk, don't look down on me. Zhou Zhentian still refused to admit defeat. He increased the speed of the psionic cannon in his mouth. At first it was 5 shots per second, but now it was 60 shots per second. Patriarch Zhou Zhentian felt like he had transformed into a human cannon. Old Zhou, can you handle it? The other family elders were worried about Elder Zhou's condition. The 7 elders had come up with the move of the human body spiritual energy cannon together. Previously, Elder Zhou Zhentian's highest record was only 40 breaths in a second. They were worried that Elder Zhou Zhentian's throat wouldn't be able to hold on. This frequency was too fast. It was no different from stuffing a vibrator in one's throat. The next day, one's throat would definitely be hoarse and unable to speak. Don't give up. I can still do it. I must teach this monk a lesson. At that moment, Elder Zhou's eyes were already red with rage. He increased the frequency of his cannons once more. 70 shots per second. Anger once again stimulated Elder Zhou's body's potential. This attack speed was truly astonishing. At the same time, the extremely high rate of fire increased the power of the psionic cannon to a certain extent. But even so, it still couldn't break the Buddha's protective halo around the monk's body. At that moment, Death Heavenly Tao led Audiobook and Lotus Sun outside the Profound Path Great Hall. Because a fierce battle had broken out inside, the entire Profound Path Great Hall had been destroyed, so there was no longer any need to enter the hall to watch the battle. Is this a battle between cultivators from the domain of the gods? Lotus Sun was stupefied, looking at the 7 great Tao venerables who were lined up in a row and crazily firing cannons. She couldn't help falling into deep thought. Little did she know that on the other side, Audiobook and Death Heavenly Tao were also dumbfounded. This wasn't right. This was supposed to be a battle between cultivators from the domain of the gods. The destructive power was indeed fierce, but why did it look so silly? Senior Zhua, may I ask, are they performing as human centipedes? The girl's small mouth was slightly agape, and it was hard for her to hide the shock and fear on her face. This was really too frightening. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe it as blinding dog eyes. Senior Death Heavenly Tao, what on earth is going on? Audiobook also felt that something wasn't right. It was as if they had clearly entered a 4K theater, but were watching a watermarked movie. Cultivators from the domain of the gods have a very unique way of thinking in battle. This is something that cultivators from Earth don't understand, so it's normal that you don't understand. Death Heavenly Tao cleared his throat as he did his best to explain the battle situation in front of him. After all, the domain of the gods was the birthplace of cultivation. As one of the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Men, Death Heavenly Tao naturally shouldered the mission of protecting the domain of the gods and spreading cultivation culture. Then Senior Death Heavenly Tao, why are they lining up? Asked Lotus Sunday. Look at the graceful postures of the 7 Tao Masters. They put their hands on the shoulders of the person in front of them, and they're as nimble as snakes. This is a combination of swimming dragon out of the sea, and I'm afraid they found inspiration from the lion dance. Cultivation is such a simple subject. You have to find inspiration from the details of life to make breakthroughs easier, replied Death Heavenly Tao. I see. And the ball of spirit power they spit out. This is the performance art of the Tao Masters. They're using this form of magic to warn the world not to spit everywhere. Thus, it can protect the environment and warn the world. As expected of a senior, he can even explain things like this. Lotus Sun couldn't help muttering. What did you say? Nothing. In the Golden Buddha Lotus, Lotus Sun raised her hand again. Then why was their team scattered by Senior Golden Lamp? While the girl was speaking, in the almost destroyed conference hall of the profound Tao Palace, 7 Tao Masters were sent flying by Golden Lamp's Buddha's palm. The 7 Tao Masters instantly turned into ant-like black dots as they were thrown into the sky. Then bang 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 bang. One by one, they fell to the ground, 1 pit for each Tao Master. 7 pits had been smashed in total. Death Heavenly Tao wiped at his sweat. This is the Tao Master paying tribute to the famous poet Bai Juyi. As the saying goes, pearls of all sizes fall on a jade plate. The floor of the profound Tao Palace is like a jade plate. This is also the performance art of the Tao Masters. Hearing this, the girl fell silent. Then she asked one last question. But why did all 7 elders vomit blood? Death Heavenly Tao put his forehead in his hand. He couldn't make it up anymore. Fuck. A plant. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.